Hey everyone, welcome back to FPL Fran. Today's video is of course going to be the Game Week 2 deadline stream. Hope you guys are doing well for the deadline. It's not really a video, of course, just a deadline stream. So nice to see you all here. Just gonna quickly just post about the stream as well. I mean, ultimately with my team, hasn't really changed too much, if we're being honest. Very much the same as the team selection, with the one change being, of course, Saliba for James. A good sort of issue, I suppose, that I had to deal with where James unfortunately couldn't play, and now I just get Saliba off my bench. So helpful to have a deep bench. But of course, sad, of course, that I won't be able to use James going forwards, which means probably James is going to be my transfer for Game Week 3. And if I do move away from João Pedro in this fixture here versus West Ham at home, it could very well be just moving to Jackson next week. So if I just show quickly what transfers I sort of have in mind, I suppose it would either be Colwill, just to capitalize on the short term anyways, and just do that, and then just going Jackson. Or I could maybe look at another City player, maybe assess the situation with, Stones and Diaz. Seems like Diaz might actually be fit. Seems like a bit of a 50-50 in that situation based on Pep's press conference. So we'll have to see what happens there. But who knows? I mean, it could even be someone like Guardiola coming in just because I have the money in the bank, and then I could just go Jackson as well. So that's one way to do it. And then Havertz, I'd probably have to persist with until Game Week 4. But one thing that I'm not so fond of, let's say, going to Guardiola with is, let's say, if I do want to go for Maddison in Game Week 4, because he's going to price rise tonight, unless I miraculously go Havertz and Maddison, which I don't really see myself doing, the reality is I probably need that 0.5 in the bank. So going from James to a 4.5 could be beneficial for me, just so I have the flexibility to move away from Havertz in that situation and then feel a bit better about that with my own team. But let's just quickly have a look at people's questions. So Alan says, done a transfer, James injured. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I think the general advice I would say is try and wait for the press conferences at the very least, because I know a lot of people can't make it around the deadline because it's at very odd times for them, particularly if you're not living in Europe or if you even have work, for example, around the deadline. So I would just say wait for the press conferences and try to make your transfer then, and try not to be motivated by some price rises unless it's something that you absolutely can't avoid. But obviously that's unfortunate there. I think it is a bit of a learning lesson as well, because in previous seasons when I would say I was less experienced in FPL myself too, that's something I made mistake-wise, just going for early transfers and trying to jump the gun. Rockman says, I'm thinking of captaining Diaby versus Everton. I mean, that's a pretty big shout, to be honest. I'm not against it, just because Haaland's fixture isn't very good, and I'm assuming you don't have Salah, of course, in this situation. So I can understand that. It's not. I think going against Haaland this week actually seems rather logical, just given the bad fixture, and also just given the injuries that they have. Jun says Diaby for 7 could be good. Yep, agree. Kieran, hope you're well. Hey, Kieran, also thank you so much if you're the same Kieran from Discord as well, who gave us the boost. Really appreciate that. So thank you very much. JP says, hi, Fran. Do price changes reset once game week commences? What do you mean by reset? So there are price changes every day, effectively, every night. So you kind of have to respond to price changes every day. Whatever the time is at wherever you're located in the world, there's a specific time where price changes happen. There are some price change websites as well. I can sort of show you one that I use myself. This is fplstatistics.co.uk. You can quite easily see, for example, on the front page here, this is actually the back page, but on the front page, you can see who's scheduled to price rise. This isn't 100% accurate because the API has never been released by Fantasy Premier League, but you can see, of course, Mbumo, Ake, Maddison, João Pedro, even Diaby are close to price rises themselves. And then when we look at price decreases, this entire page of players set to decrease. Ings, Raya, Lo Celso, Twine, Burton Traore, De Bruyne, which actually would be a second price decrease for De Bruyne. And then me, Webster, Lallana, Gray, Lukaku, Pedro Porro. Now, I believe Kai Havertz is pretty close. He's here, but I don't think he's that close to a price fall. So I'm hoping I don't have to make any moves today that are motivated by Havertz's price fall. But going back to general questions as well, whilst I just quickly show my team. Let's see. So thoughts on Shaw starting? I mean, Shaw will start, but I wouldn't be tempted by starting Shaw in my own team if that's the question. no interest really in Shaw at this point in time. By the way, if you guys are new, if you guys could like as well the live stream and also subscribe, that would be much appreciated. Hope you guys are doing well. Start Foden or João Pedro? I would definitely start João Pedro, actually. I think it's a better fixture, and ultimately Foden versus Newcastle. I also think that there is a bit of a symptom with Foden sort of filling in the space within the midfield position that we might see slightly less expected goal involvement from Foden. He was rather quiet in the Super Cup game, and I'm not going to say, of course, that football games repeat themselves or our understanding of how good Foden can be should change, but changing his role will, of course, have some consequences when we talk about FPL returns as well. As far as Osula versus Eze, I'd probably still go with Eze because I think the Sheffield United attack is still pretty paltry. Anime Zone, thank you so much. Really appreciate that shout out there. Jammer says, will you be getting Malo Gusto? Maybe in Game Week 3. I mean, I'll have to obviously see how Chelsea line up. We also saw the news today that they're actually going for Ivan Fresneda, so that would be quite interesting because that's, I mean, as soon as that deal's done, I'm not going to touch Gusto. So we'll see what happens over the course of the week in terms of, let's say, Gusto and whether he seems to be the preferred right back or whether Chelsea's actually going for someone else as well. As far as Entice Designs, would you do any of Eze to Mbumo, Martinelli to... I would definitely do Eze to Mbumo, my friend. I would not do João Pedro to Jackson this game week. I don't think it makes sense. In fact, I think João Pedro and Jackson are pretty similar games. As far as Martinelli to Madison, no, because I think Martinelli has a fantastic game week 3. So when you think about comparing, let's say, Madison and Martinelli between game weeks 2 and 3, I would rather make that move in game week 4. That's probably how I would see that. As far as Pavertz, thank you, Snake. Appreciate that, my friend. Ed Jacob says, I forgot to put Turner in my game week. You can still do that, can't you? Oh, do you mean in terms of your game week 1 draft? No, I wouldn't bring him in for Areola. It's not worth it. I mean, wasting a transfer on a 4.0 keeper, particularly one who plays for a very, very weak defense like Nottingham Forest themselves, isn't worth it. Ultimately, you might have access to West Ham, and if you wildcard a little bit later, Areola could pay out in dividends for you. So I hope that works out well. KDB's price was going down, so I had to get Mbumo. Yeah, that makes sense. I can understand that. Elohim. I'm not really sure how best to pronounce it. Do let me know how to best pronounce your name. Apologies. 3.5 million in the bank, Rashford to Salah. I mean, it seems like you've been saving the money for it, so I would definitely do it and definitely captain Salah. Yeah. Would you go for Turner or Onana? I'd definitely go for Turner, but it's pretty close this week. I can understand people wanting to go for Onana. I'm just not really seeing the opportunities for United to get a clean sheet at this point in time. And as I said, Sheffield United's attack is pretty paltry. So once this game week is locked in, does it change anything or is it exactly the same? If you're based in London, right, what happens is the game week deadline is completely different to price rises or price falls. Price rises and falls just drop down or change every day. It really just requires you to actually look at these price changing websites to make sure that you're monitoring them, and you can probably make the best decision there. What I would say as well, just with a little bit more FPL experience, is that you don't really want to make decisions based on price changes, because as you can see this week, if let's say you went for James early on in the week and you wanted to, let's say, capture a price rise, it's not worth it, because the benefit of getting the information all the way to the deadline, including all the information that you get in the press conferences and anything that we get through sort of journalistic outlets and things like that, are very, very important. And I've definitely had to take -4s in the past that I won't be doing again, just because I did transfers early, and it's usually never worth it, even though sometimes it might feel good to get that additional 0.1. What I would say sometimes too is, of course, there's going to be parts in the season where it's very unlikely that someone gets injured in training, which actually seemed to happen to Reece James. But usually, of course, let's say if a team has just played a European game and someone has come off and he didn't look like he was injured, you can maybe do some price rises after European games as well. But yeah, I mean, in general, it's always better to wait as much as possible. Let's see. Romano denied the Fresneda links. Okay, I appreciate that, Thomas. And to be honest, Romano actually seems very clued in with Chelsea, so that's going to be Malo Gusto, very close. I mean, the way I see it as well, if I go to Malo Gusto, I've got so much money in the bank. I would have effectively 2.5 million in the bank, and then with Jackson left, I mean, there could even be a world where I could bench boost game week 3. I mean, let me think about it for a second. So if let's say Malo Gusto's a go, and I'm a little bit crazy, I think I could do this. Wait, I could just... Am I doing something wrong? Or is this really just how much money I have in the bank? This is not a bad bench boost 3, is it not? I guess my keepers have terrible fixtures. Not really. I mean, Pickford's got a good one. All right, Turner, not the best. I don't know. I kind of like the look of this bench boost for Game Week 3. It's kind of spicy. What do you guys think? Just going to quickly answer some questions while I ponder that in the moment. Total Tactics FPL black screen. So you've been watching me for a while. I appreciate you being around. Nick Jackson, Malagusa will be there. Yep, sorry, I responded to that already. Would you captain Watkins? I probably would consider it, but hard to answer, of course, given that I don't have Watkins in my team. I'd still probably go for Haaland just because he's playing at home, even though it's a very tough opponent in Newcastle. But yeah, it's close. Aren't you concerned on James's price drop? I mean, we can have a look at James in a moment. Best 1 week punt for Liverpool. Look, I'd probably say Diogo Jota anyways, because, I mean, he's always got the best underlying stats when it comes to players outside of Salah. And I'm also sort of excluding Darwin from this because he never tends to play at this point in time. So, as a starter, at least. As far as Mohammed's question, who will you transfer out in Game Week 3 after saving 2 free transfers? So, I mean, as I said, I'd be looking out James for sure. And then I'd be looking to bring in Jackson. So that's basically my transfers. Whether it's out from Taylor or whether it's out from João Pedro, we'll see. WWE everything. Should I sell James? Should I sell James? No, unless you don't have, let's say, 3 playing defenders this week, then don't sell James, because I don't think James is actually close to a price drop. And I'll show you the price drop right now as well. Because if I search for James, for example, James is only at minus 19.5. That's nowhere near enough close to a price drop. So, for example, the people who are actually close to price drops are here. I mean, they're at like minus 100, minus 99. I don't even think, for example, some of the players that are in the minus 80s, for example, are really good at price drop. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about James at this point in time. As far as other questions, Ed Jacobs, thank you, my friend. Thank you to you as well. Emil says, already 2 red players. Fran, I pray for you, my man. Okay, to be honest, one of the red players was something I did to myself because I just didn't want to have a red. I didn't want to have a price fall on someone like Archer. Just in case, for example, let's say we all went Archer and then suddenly we all decided to go Balogun. Archer would probably get a price drop, right? So I would be sort of forced to go there and actually maybe lose a bit of value if I didn't want to go for Balogun immediately. So that's sort of why I went for one red player. The other red player, of course, is James, which is a bit depressing, but it is what it is, isn't it, when you go for James? Evil Monarch says, would you sell James if you had to start Bulldog versus Nottingham? Yeah, I think so. I think you'd have to do that because Bulldog doesn't seem like he's fit. Henry, hope you're doing well as well. And obviously, 89 of you guys in the chat, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys could like and subscribe, that would be lovely. Vin2411, thoughts on Manchester City versus Newcastle United? I mean, to be honest, though, if you look at the history of some of these City and Newcastle games, City have found it very, very easy to score, particularly at home. So I would say the clean sheets for both teams are relatively low in terms of the probabilities, and I'm not seeing that it's going to be some sort of closely packed or tight game, in my opinion. I still think there are plenty of opportunities for City to do well. And yes, of course, you might mention, for example, De Bruyne missing out, some of the players like Gundogan leaving. That's going to drop, for example, I guess the ceiling of the City attack. But for the most part, it's still a very impressive team. And I actually think Rico Lewis, for example, if he plays in the match, is going to be a little bit better than Akanji when he was operating that sort of Stones role too. So that would be a nice little benefit from what we saw in the Super Cup. And I also think even when you look back at the Super Cup game too, I'm pretty sure the sort of instructions were to not go so hard in that game, because that was not City at its best, for sure. Simon says, hi Fran, would you start Henry Fulham away or Gusto? I would definitely go Gusto. I mean, it's unlikely that Gusto doesn't get a start, so I'm expecting Gusto to start 95%, and ultimately for me it's a better fixture because I think Fulham's attack is much better than West Ham's, is sort of the way I see it. Yeah. Carl Brown says replacement for Stones. You've got Chilwell, Stupian, Gabriel. I mean, I think you can wait in this situation. You can obviously go for Colwell, but it's not like West Ham away is a perfect game to sort of start Colwell with. The information is better. You've already taken the price drop on Stones. I don't really see Stones dropping again until maybe you have better information to make a transfer for Game Week 3. So given that Stones is already price dropped, I would actually just roll the transfer in your situation. Watkins, captain over Haaland. You can definitely do it, but I don't think Haaland will be benched, but I think this is a good opportunity to go against Haaland captain. That's something I can definitely agree with. Alex says, which one should I bench out of Pedro, Jackson, Martinelli? I would actually bench either Pedro or Bruno in that situation, probably. I would probably bench Bruno myself if I was actually dealt with that hand. Tom says, would you do a kanji to Trent for a -4? No, because Trent's next two fixtures are really bad, and you're probably not captaining Trent, so the value of going for Trent doesn't seem that high. Akanji will probably likely start in Game Week 3 as well, which is a much better game. Oh, right. Sorry, I don't actually have Gusto. I mean, what do you guys actually think about my bench boost team for Game Week 3? Do you guys like it prospectively? I actually think it looks pretty spicy. But you know what? Let's just reset my team. I'm just gonna quickly look at it one more time. So of course, United have a great fixture, right? They've got Nottingham Forest, and Boom has a good fixture too. I think it's Crystal Palace at home, isn't it? Yeah, at least that's at home. And then Arsenal, of course, have a great game themselves versus Fulham at home. West Ham at home is nice too, for Brighton at least. And then, Chelsea, perfect game versus Luton. Shaw's got a good game as well. I really might bench boost 3. The question is, of course, what to do with Kai Havertz if he stinks in Game Week 3. I suppose I can always go Richarlison. And then the question would be if, let's say, so I would probably be blocked out of Madison, but this is a pretty spicy team. So I would be pretty tempted to bench boost Game Week 3, if I'm being honest. Effectively, all my outfield players have a good game of football. And then I could seriously consider just moving out slowly out of this sort of team. It's not a bad idea, I would say. We just have to hope that Gusto plays in that week, which I think is still pretty likely, given that the European fixtures don't even kick in then. So he would have more than enough rest from that 1 week from West Ham. So yeah, I'm definitely thoroughly considering that one. So that will be in the back of my mind for next week. That will be an interesting video as well when we get there. Savage says he's transferred in James early, just going to play FIFA and listen to your stream this deadline. my man. I'm sorry about that. As I said, try to make transfers out after press conferences is the only advice I can give. Whether you're around for the deadline or not, that's just, depending on your time zone and things like that. So I can understand if you miss the deadline, but yeah, try to be there to make transfers post press conferences. If you're forced by price, then I guess it is what it is too. Havertz and Boom are worth a -4. I don't think so. I'm keeping Havertz. I'm not saying I'm confident in Havertz, but ultimately he's got 2 good games next, and Madison has a bad game in Game Week 2. So I feel like even if you wanted to go to someone else, you can just go for that move in Game Week 4, because Havertz once again has a really good game in Game Week 3. And yes, of course, we might not rate Havertz, including myself, particularly highly, but it's not the same thing as saying Mikel Arteta doesn't rate Havertz, because I think it's very clear that he does. A Midnight Meal, appreciate that on the bench boost Game Week 3. And yeah, Kanan, I've definitely changed my team. You're right, I might be confusing some people. So I play Pau Torres or Gabriel. That was Oasis' question. I would definitely play Pau Torres. It's a much better fixture. Did you buy Gusto and Jackson? No, I didn't. Sorry, yeah. Not to confuse anyone. Would I start Henry or Colwell? I'd probably start Colwell, to be honest. Loads of defense questions. Those injuries definitely causing issues all around. Yeah, can you imagine what would happen if we actually had Estupiñán as an injury? That would be insane. Lila says, have Saliba and Chilwell starting, torn between Cash, Henry, and Gabriel. I think it's between Cash and Gabriel for you. I think Henry doesn't have the best of fixtures. I like to see Fulham as a very good attack. Who to start, Gusto or Matty Cash? I'd start... It's a tough one, actually, there. I'd probably still start Matty Cash, if I'm being honest. I'm not taking the -4 KVH. It's just an idea for Game Week 3 in terms of bench boosting there. Llewellyn says bench one between Foden and Boom or João Pedro. I'd probably bench one of João Pedro or Foden. At that point, I'd probably bench João Pedro. It's quite tough. Yeah, the thing is, Foden just has such easy access to minutes now with the injuries. Because what do we get from the press conference? Something like Alvarez was struggling with a muscular issue. So he might not even play this game week. So very hard to see Foden not getting sufficient minutes, which means that I'd probably go towards Foden. I have more comfort in his minutes. You always know that João Pedro can be sort of maybe hooked a little bit earlier than most. If Bruno blanks again, is it worth dropping him to a 7.5, then upgrading Gabriel to Chilwell? It's not a bad idea. But the thing is, if Bruno blanks again, he still has a very, very good Game Week 3. So I still wouldn't move to that 7.5 player until game week 4, which is tough, of course, as you're trying to get to Chilwell by game week 3. So I would look for someone else in your team to really be that make weight if possible. And Ederson or Turner, I'd definitely play Ederson, I would say. Akanji is the nearest to nailed in City defense. I've mentioned Akanji in the cheat sheet because I do think that he covers a lot of positions in the team and that Pep has the confidence in him to cover those positions. I generally agree with your points, particularly if Ruben Diaz and Stones is out. I do think Ruben Diaz is more nailed, and even Stones. But look, they're both close to being hospital patients again. So yeah, Akanji makes a lot of sense. Yusuf says Isak or Pedro. I would definitely go with Pedro. Archit, did you go for the bench boost in the end, and how did that go? Evil Monarch, are you just going to bench Havertz for Jackson? I wouldn't bench, right? Because I would be bench boosting. That's what I would be doing. Saka C locked. I need to see that post deadline for sure. Joe says if Bruno blanks again, is it worth? Oh, sorry, I think I've answered that. Hey, Fran, should I start Saliba over Shaw? Definitely. I would definitely start an Arsenal defender over Shaw. It's just not a good game week or a good fixture for Shaw, if we're being honest. So yeah, I don't see it as an opportunity to play Shaw myself. And that's why I've got Shaw on the bench. Start Turner or Onana. I think Turner is nicer. I mean, people say Spurs might generate a lot of chances, but they didn't actually generate too many chances versus Brentford. I feel like people are slightly overrating how good this Spurs attack looks. If I'm being completely honest, and even the second Maddison assist, like, let's be honest, it's not like he's some sort of creative powerhouse. That was a complete accident. So yeah, Ravish says I still have Odegaard and Ruben Diaz. Look, Odegaard is a good keep. Ruben Diaz probably not as much, but I would still play Ruben Diaz because I see it as a situation where he's not going to be risked, right? So either he starts or he doesn't. So I would just play Ruben Diaz, and then whoever is on your bench can just come on, unless you've got much better bench players. Harold, appreciate it once again. Nice to see you around as well. Shane says, still have Odegaard and Stone. Should I keep Odegaard? Yeah, I would definitely keep Odegaard. I mean, there's no issues with Odegaard. He still has a very, very good Game Week 3 fixture. I would just play him then. I mean, I've got to be honest as well. Like, you don't need to overreact to Game Week 1 because, I mean, if we think about it from just a historical lens, have you ever seen a player in FPL consistently score the same points that they did the previous week? No. Some people will blank. Some people will haul 3 weeks in a row. You can't really predict too much of that ahead of time. But what you can do ahead of time is just simply look at the fixtures ahead and just say, okay, this player has a good fixture run. He's performing well based on underlying stats. He looks good, and I'm predicting him to do well over this run of games. But he can still blank on a green fixture, and people can still do incredible on a red fixture. A good example of that is Salah, for example, blanking both times versus Bournemouth last year, and the blank including a penalty miss. So start Dunker Gabriel. I would definitely start Gabriel. Oh, that's actually quite tough. I'd probably still start. I think the clean sheet probabilities are pretty close, and I guess Gabriel's just a bit better in terms of a set piece threat. So I would just go Gabriel in that situation. Captain Salah, Holland. I mean, if I owned Salah, I would definitely be captaining Salah. But here I am owning Holland. Do I plan on doing a Champions League fantasy team? I am actually going. I'm 100% committing to Champions League fantasy. In previous years, I really struggled to have the time to do the videos for them, but I actually have a slightly better calendar this year. So I do think I will be doing Champions League fantasy videos and also just Champions League fantasy in general. I've got Ederson, but I'm leaning towards starting Turner. I think, look, it's a 50-50 because it's a bad fixture for Everton. I'm sorry, Ederson, but you're also looking at Turner and just saying that's his best possible fixture, but how much faith do we have in the Nottingham Forest defense? So kind of the opposite ends of the plate there. I guess Turner makes a bit more sense just because the fixture is better. And look, if you're ever going to go against Ederson, this would be the week. So if you feel like, for example, you want to hedge against the rest of the playing population as well, because a lot of people are going Turner, then you can do that. But actually, if you see it the way that I see it, I think Ederson's actually got as good a fixture, and maybe you've got an opportunity to go against the crowd here with a very good pick as well. Rio says, hi, Fran, are you planning on keeping S2 for long term, even the harder? Yes, I have to, because I'm kind of forced to make a Reece James transfer, to be honest. So even though I might not play Estupiñán too much, I think I will be playing with him for the time being. Ozovit says, I'm trying to decide between Mbeumo, Fernandes, March. I'd probably bench March, if I'm being honest. I think he gets the least minutes out of all three players. So from that sort of reasoning, I would say probably March is going to struggle the most. Llewellyn, no problem. Danielle says, I'm thinking of transferring out Haddison. I mean, you can do that. I mean, it's good because I think Madison's getting a price rise. So if you're someone who wants to sort of attack price, then you can do that. Eze to Madison or to Diaby or roll. I think rolling makes sense, but I do think Eze has two back-to-back bad fixtures. So I'd probably actually go with Diaby as well. Save a bit of money there if you really want to force a transfer. You didn't bench boost in the end. Fair enough, Archon. And good on you for going for bench boost game week 3. I might do that with you, to be honest. Nothing to do with this game week, but I'm like 90% certain I'll wildcard game week 9. So looking at transfers for game week 4 to 8, and I'm thinking Foden plus Pedro rotating. Yeah, Foden is very good just in general in the short term, right? And with João Pedro at the very minimum, you get him back on game week 6 for Bournemouth. It's a very nice fixture. Saliba's closer to a clean sheet, but the way Tottenham plays, Shaw is higher. I mean, look, Shaw just didn't look very attacking versus Wolves is all I'm going to say. I'm always going to trust the clean sheet because actually the percentage chance that a defender actually gets an attacking return is generally quite low in FPL. So I tend to lean with a clean sheet most often. So I would go with Saliba over Shaw. Eze to Madison or to Diaby to roll. I think I've answered that already. Who should I do with Stones, sell or hold? It depends on whether you have a bench or not. If you've got a strong bench, I would sell Stones next week if he still is confirmed to be out. Because I think holding the transfer is very powerful for your ability to make better decisions on game week 3. Benching Gabriel or Akanji. I would definitely bench. I'd definitely bench. Oof, that's tough. I'd probably bench Gabriel, to be honest. What are your potential transfers for game week 3? I think Malo Gusto in and Jackson in as well. Reece James out. Don't really know who I'm going to take out, whether it's João Pedro or my 4.5 forward. Avril says, should I transfer out Anthony for Mbumo? Yeah, I would probably do that. I don't really love Anthony as a pick, and I do think Mbumo is very, very good. Griffin says Ruben or Fernandes. I would definitely play Fernandes. What do you mean by Ruben or Fernandes? Because Ruben Diaz is not playing today. Well, actually, he could play, but I think it's a 50-50, so I would still go Fernandes in this situation. It's not a great game for Ruben Diaz. We did actually get a confirmation from Pep that Ruben Diaz could have a late fitness test and therefore be ready to play. So we'll see what happens there. Is it worth to try? Thanks, Ahmed, as well. If you could, as he says, like the video as well, that would be really nice. I would keep Gabriel generally. Like, it is a good fixture versus Crystal Palace. They have top 2 or 3 clean sheet odds in terms of all teams this week. It's a good chance to play Gabriel. We also saw that what Arteta said was that he played or he benched Gabriel for specific tactical instructions, right, to play against the Christmas tree formation that they expected Nottingham Forest would play. I don't really think that's how Crystal Palace line up when you compare, let's say, the back 5 and that general sort of Christmas tree shape versus what a regular, flat back 4 would be. So I do think Gabriel plays. Salah says, is it worth to try to get Saliba to replace Gabriel? Not this week, no. I would actually hold on that transfer. Is Matoma a keep for game week 2? Yeah, I think so. It's a good fixture still. Can someone please summarize any leaks we have? I mean, I can summarize it now. Effectively, James is out. We don't know for how long. Maybe a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Stones is definitely out. Diaz is 50-50, suffering a kind of late fitness test. Ben Mee is also with a late fitness test, so we don't really know whether either of those two will play. As far as big news in terms of other teams, we haven't really had any other big news. These are really the largest sort of leaks that we've had so far, and there aren't any kind of late deadline leaks, given that the early fixture is a pretty tame one when it comes to FPL. Can someone please summarize? Yeah, sorry. Sure, Gabriel. I would definitely play Gabriel. Still worried about Saliba saying he wasn't 100%. I mean, why are you worried about that, Henry? What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean for you? Like, for me, it just sounds like a player talking about how he's not at his peak fitness, as opposed to, because if you think about the logic of it, he's started all these games in the preseason and also recently with the last game in game week 1, even though he's not been 100%. Why would it suddenly change for game week 2? I think we shouldn't overread into that, personally. You should keep Pedro, transfer out Taylor and James. Yeah, I'm planning to do a bench boost, Alex, as I said, for game week 3. I mean, if Foden hasn't got a price rise, then I would definitely do Havertz to Foden game week 4. Very, very logical points. Trent, Rashford, Martinelli, or Odegaard captain as a differential. I wouldn't Odegaard captain this week. I mean, to be honest, if you've got Trent in your team, I would definitely captain Trent over Haaland if you wanted to go away from the Viking. But I will be captaining Haaland. Is it worth just making the one transfer in Game Week 3? I think so, right? Because if you're not planning to bench boost or do something crazy, you can just do one transfer for game week 3, and holding 2 free transfers for game week 4 can be quite nice because there is a nice fixture swing for both United and Arsenal. Particularly Arsenal, I would say that's a good time to maybe drop or jump off our Arsenal assets on game week 4. So maybe having 2 free transfers then is actually very beneficial. FPL Yeti says, "What do you think about Rashi as captain?" I'm not really seeing it, to be quite honest, but you can definitely go for it. I would say I would still comfortably go for Haaland. I know what you mean in terms of Rashford on the counter. That's certainly true. But I'd probably still back Erling Haaland. Ederson or Turner, it's a 50-50. I would go with Ederson just because less people own Ederson. It could be a good chance for you to get some differential points once again. For what I would say is even fixtures, just because it's a bad fixture for City, but technically every fixture is a bad fixture for Nottingham Forest as well because they're such a poor defense. Just getting an opportunity to face a very poor attack as well. So Hawkey Boy says, who's better, Jackson or Alvarez? I would say Alvarez with the KDB injury. But for game week 3, I would still say Jackson is better than Alvarez. So for example, game week 3, I'd probably go with Jackson. But actually, Alvarez is a pick that I'd happily sort of live with in my team, particularly in my team shape. Let's say I don't go for Malo Gusto. I'd probably be inclined to go for Alvarez if I wasn't bench boosting. That could be an option too. When would you think to take out the Brighton assets? You've got Estupiñán, Mitoma. I mean, I'd probably take them out game week 3 or 4. So, as I said, game week 4 is a sort of big swing territory week. So you can just hold your transfers till then as well. As in, probably use one transfer in game week 2 or 3 and then actually go for the 2 free transfers being used in game week 4. BL says, have Gabriel, Chilwell, Estupiñán, Rico, Lewis. I would, that's a tough situation there. I mean, I definitely played Chilwell and Estupiñán. I'd probably actually think about benching Rico Lewis anyways, because the Arsenal clean sheet odds are very, very good. And yeah, I mean, it's not like Rico Lewis is, even though he's going to play a little bit more advanced than some of the other defenders, if he does play, it's not like there's crazy value in this Newcastle game. So that's what I would say. One Matty or Jenny. Come on, man. Just go Parallelo. You know what it is. Why not bench boost in a double game week? I mean, I think the logic of bench boosting a double game week is like so, right? Because when you think about it, when you're bench boosting in a double game week, you're probably only going to have one player on your bench with a double game week, because it's very unlikely that you actually have a situation, particularly with the way sort of Ben described the double game weeks this season laying out. You're very unlikely to get a situation where you have 15 double game weekers, right? So most often your bench boost actually has 3 players on your bench with good fixtures, and then maybe 1 player with a double game week, say a goalkeeper. So actually, when you compare benches on a single game week versus benches on a double game week, it's not too different if you have good fixtures on the bench. So that's why I quite like the idea of bench boost 3. Rashford and De Bruyne to Salah and Mbumo -4. I mean, I definitely think about. I just don't like the idea of going from De Bruyne. I mean, dropping Rashford before game week 3. I think it's just such a good fixture for Rashford in game week 3. I wouldn't take that -4 if I'm being honest. I love the idea of Salah captaincy, and I love the idea of going out of someone like KDB this week to Salah in theory, but dropping Rashford but before game week 3 just doesn't scream crazy good value for me. So I'd probably avoid it. I would just try to find a good single transfer out of De Bruyne and then continue to keep Rashford in your team. I'm not even opposed to the idea of De Bruyne to Mbumo, for example, and then just doing that one single transfer. Flux says, should I wait for Game Week 3 to sell James? I would definitely wait. I mean, there's no price drop that's coming for James as far as I'm concerned. So if we just look at price drops again, I'll just quickly refresh the site. So Disasi's close to a price rise. That's very, very sort of recent bias. João Pedro close, Chilwell close, interesting. A couple of people going to Salah, probably from De Bruyne if we're being honest. But I wouldn't do that move. And then if I look for James, not that close to a for a price fall. If I look at Havertz, also not that close to a price fall. So I would say I would only really be concerned about my players who are, 90, 95 plus. Those are the players who are closest to a price fall. So someone like Ruben Diaz might be dangerously within that territory. So we'll have to monitor it. But as of this time, 45 minutes away from the deadline, doesn't really seem like James is close to a price fall. So I wouldn't be forced into that move, or I wouldn't want to be forced into that move, is all I'm saying. Mirza says, should I transfer out both Stones and Reese? No, I don't think so. I think transferring out one of them would make sense. If you're struggling to line up 3 players in your team, then I would definitely do that. Particularly if you, let's say, have someone like Baldock who's not playing this week. Zachary says start Saliba or Henry this week. I would definitely start Saliba. I mean, look, even if Mitchell's out, I still think Fulham's attack is quite good. Palhinha, of course, is instrumental to their defense, but probably less so for their attack. Yeah, that's kind of how I see that situation. Hey, Fran, would you say March or Fernandes? I would say Fernandes, honestly. Just I've got more guarantees of Fernandes' minutes. We know Adingra can be a sub for both Mitoma and March effectively on the wing positions, but I'd say fairly likely that we see a repeat substitution of March for Adingra quite early on. And for that reason, I'd probably just back Fernandes. Rico Lewis and Foden low-key think... I don't think... Look, I think Rico Lewis is nice because you're owning someone who, while Stones is out, is likely going to fill in Stones' place in the team. And then as far as Foden, I think he's just been benefiting from all the sort of injuries that they have as well. The KDB one in particular, but also just even the recently reported Julian Alvarez sort of muscular issue that apparently, prevented him from playing the full match in the Super Cup. Away says worth the -4 for Salah. I would say no. I wouldn't -4 for Salah because the thing is, let's just have a look at some Liverpool assets, right? Say I look at Salah this week and I go for a -4 in Salah. I mean, these are the fixtures. You've got Newcastle away immediately, then Aston Villa. Those 2 fixtures are very poor for me, in my opinion. So if you're taking a -4 just to maximize on Bournemouth, I get the idea that the captaincy is very nice, but unless you really think that there's some sort of huge captaincy gulf between Haaland and Salah, even with the -4 baked in, and then you're not worried about game weeks 3 and 4 and how your team would look like, it's tough because if you own Salah versus Newcastle away, you're staring at a bunch of people in FPL who do once again own a very good on paper fixture for United. So that Nottingham Forest game for United is lovely. For me, as someone who's owning some United assets, I'm very tempted to move one of my Arsenal or United assets out after Game Week 3, just because Game Week 4 is a bad one as well. But for now, I just can't see myself. If you started with the United and Arsenal structure, I wouldn't really move away to Salah because it's unnecessary, and you're going to have some pain in the next week. And there's no point taking -4s back and forth, is sort of how I see it. Saliba or Henry, I think generally people have asked the question about Arsenal defense versus, for example, Shaw and versus Brentford. I would definitely pick Arsenal defense in that situation. So I'd definitely start Saliba over Henry, in my opinion. Do I play Pedro or Foden? I'd probably play Foden, to be honest. Just because I have slightly more guarantees of his minutes for this particular week, even though the fixture is slightly better for João Pedro. Thoughts on Isak? Should I go from Jesus? I don't like Isak, just ahead of City and Liverpool. So Salah and Mbeumo. I mean, I'd go if you just asked me that question on the spot, I would say Salah, but I do really like Mbeumo. Mitoma to Mbeumo, I wouldn't overreact on that. I think Mitoma still has a good fixture himself. Current transfer plans, rolling the transfer in Game Week 2, and then Game Week 3 probably going Gusto plus Jackson. Always says, what about Mitoma to Mbeumo? I don't think there's a need to attack Game Week 2 like that because ultimately Wolves away is still a decent fixture. And so, yeah, I don't see it as an opportunity to go to Mbeumo immediately. I'd probably go to Mbeumo Game Week 3 or 4. Any changes in my team? Absolutely no. Absolutely not, sorry. But I will show you how I'm lining up my team. So it's going to be like so. Shaw will be on the bench for me. Do I think I should start Colwell instead of Saliba? No, I'd still start Saliba. Should I transfer out both Stones and Reese? I would only transfer out one of them. I wouldn't transfer out both. I'd probably transfer out Reese to be quite honest, because we know he's out for 2 to 3 weeks at the bare minimum. So, and it would probably allow you to get a better Chelsea player, especially since Chelsea are the team with the better swing. So, for example, I really want to get triple Chelsea by next week, but I don't really necessarily want to get triple City by next week. So that's sort of how I view that situation. Onana or Pickford? I'd definitely play Onana over Pickford. Should I start Madison or Mbumo? I would definitely play Mbumo. But look, I mean, do you have anyone else in your team that you can bench? Start Gabriel or Colwell. Would still definitely start Gabriel. If you guys could also like the stream, that would be really appreciated, and subscribe as well. What do you think about Stones to Guardiola? It could make sense. It could hurt you in the medium term, but I would just go for it. I would just go for that move because we know Stones is injured, worst case, and it's very likely that Guardiola starts. But it's a tough game though. Tough game versus Newcastle, so you have to think about that too. I'd probably go with Gusto actually in that situation. Found you on TikTok. Really enjoy the channel. Oh, thank you, Cliff Buckley. Appreciate that. I have been actually been on TikTok lately, so I don't know if any of you actually use TikTok. That would be the platform where you can find me in recently as well. And I've been posting a lot more on Twitter too. Should I switch out Pickford? No, I don't think there's a need to overreact. And ultimately, the goalkeeper position is not one that I would really. It's not one that I want to be spending transfers on. It's a position where I want to sort of pick long term. Know that like ultimately, what was the top team with clean sheets last season? United was 16 clean sheets. So it's very unlikely that the 4.5 goalkeepers you're looking at are going to get clean sheets week on week. So very tough. You want to leave Shaw. What do you mean by you want to leave? Do you mean Shaw? Is Henry better than Udogi? For this week, yes. But I think in like maybe medium term, I might actually prefer Udogi a bit more. Is it fine to bring in Gusto for Stones and have... Yeah, of course it is fine to have money in the bank. But I only have 5.5 left. I don't have money for Chilwell with who? Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you mean, Mirza. I mean, I'd probably go with Gusto, actually, in that situation. Should I switch Gabriel to Saliba? I would not do that move, Shirag. I don't think it's necessary to do that move this week. I'm fairly confident that Gabriel will play. So we'll see what happens. I think you can react to that in Game Week 3. If, let's say, Gabriel gets benched again, you can do that. But I think right now the information we have is Gabriel is likely to start, or that's what we expect. A lot of lineup experts for Arsenal have suggested that he will start. I'd probably just error. It's not a great fixture for anyone in Game Week 2, particularly from the defensive point of view, unless you're looking at a Liverpool defender. So from that sort of simple reason, I would just say it's better to roll the transfer in that situation. Why not Gusto / Cash instead of injured James? You can definitely go Cash to cover Game Week 2. That's correct. But I think Cash could also sometimes be dropped. As far as someone like Gusto, though, I think he's a very logical transfer, particularly the Fresneda leaks don't seem to be true. I haven't actually read that on Twitter myself yet, so I can't confirm or deny that. As far as Fran, Shaw, or Pinnock, I would probably go with Shaw. I have Gabriel. I don't know if I should transfer him out. I would actually hold Gabriel this week. How many points did I get last week? I got 77, so I can quickly just show you guys. Wasn't the best of weeks, obviously, just because keeper slightly disappointing, and then of course Havertz disappointing alongside having Chilwell benched, and then just the United midfields blanking as well. Pretty average week, if I'm being honest. 1.22 million in the world right now, hoping to do better. So we'll see what happens this week. Kind of sad that I can't play Reece James this week is actually the saddest part of this week for me, for sure. Sure, Gabriel. I'd definitely go Gabriel. Is John Stones 100% out? Yes, he is. That's what we've gotten confirmed from Pep today, actually, from the press conference too. Michael says, should I bench one of Madison or Onana rather? Whoa. What do you mean by Madison or Onana? Why is it between Madison or Onana? I'm kind of confused there. If you can just clarify. Alex says, should I keep James or transfer him for something else? Look, I'd probably go with I'd probably keep James unless you really don't have 3 starting players for yourself this week, because James isn't particularly close to a price fall. Oh, I see what you mean, Michael. Look, I'd probably... I mean, there's obviously a world where Onana and Madison can do well, because you don't just need a clean sheet, or you don't just need a clean sheet for a keeper to do well. For example, Raya last season actually lost a lot of clean sheets, but got a lot of points from saves and things like that. I'd be happy to play both, because sometimes if you think Madison will do well and there's still a chance for a United clean sheet, you can still sort of bet on both sides. I don't think it makes that much sense to go deep into your bench if suddenly you have to do that. But for example, if you've got Turner, I'd easily play Turner over Onana if you wanted to put it that way. Should I keep James or transfer him for something else? Sorry, I did answer that question already. But yeah, I think because he's not close to a price rise or a price fall, you don't really need to do that. Sakir says, can you rank Bruno, Madison, and Martinelli for short term, 5 weeks? I'd probably still rank Bruno then Madison, then Martinelli in that order. Is there a case for Pedro to Watkins despite their game week 4 fixture versus Liverpool? Hmm. I mean, why would you want to do that for game week 4 though? Or when are you going Watkins? Are you going for Watkins this week? Ravish says, who should I transfer, James or Mubama? I'd transfer James for sure if you needed to do that. Gusto or Disasi, I'd probably go Gusto. I think the thing is, Disasi might not be worth it if you just think about it in terms of him being a center back. What do you think was the main reason I got a top 10k rank last year? I'd say I'd just say I got lucky at certain times, luckier than most, maybe. No, but to be honest, I think I actually practiced some really good decision making close to the second half of the season. So when the double game weeks were around, when I was wild carding, I think I was planning a lot better. At the start of the season, I made a couple mistakes, particularly when I for example, I would say trying to reduce on hits that are silly on single game weeks was something that helped. Because at the start of the season, I did something quite silly for Darwin and Foden. Didn't really work out. I planned better, definitely closer towards the end of the season in terms of double game weeks, as I said. Just looking at the future, looking at fixture probabilities, when they would be rescheduled, things like that. So also utilizing, for example, Ben Cullen's like fixture probability planner, that was quite helpful. And as I said, I think a couple captaincies I went against Holland, and sometimes it was wrong, sometimes very very wrong. But yeah, I mean, being confident to just maximize points as opposed to sort of looking at ownership is what I would say. Because I think I don't like making decisions on ownership. I just like making decisions based on how many points I think people will score. So I'm not someone who really cares too much about effective ownership, and that's what I would say advice wise. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really. I mean, Watkins is great this week. I have to say that always. If you can do that, I would go for it, but not for a -4 or not anything else, because Watkins for game week 2 and 3 is probably still better than João Pedro. So yeah, if you can afford to do that move, I'd probably do that. But I also really like Jackson, just to sort of put that in the ether. As far as Mikey, cheers for the content, brother. Who would you bench between Diaz, Chilwell, and Saliba? At this point, I mean, Diaz is actually out. Sorry, no, Diaz is not out. Sorry. Let me repeat myself. I think Pep confirmed that Diaz is dealing with a late fitness test, which means that he could play or could not play. In this situation, I would probably just play Saliba, because maybe there's like a 5 to 10% chance that Diaz just sort of jogs on to the pitch and plays 5 to 10 minutes. Not really worth it for me. Saliba's got really good clean sheet percentages, and as far as Chilwell, a decent fixture from the clean sheet probability point of view, but of course probably one of the best attackers we have in FPL from a defender point of view. Can you show your Game Week 3 bench boost plan? I mean, yeah, it's very simple if we're being honest. Just go out of James, get Malo Gusto in my team if all else is good, and then just get Jackson in my team as well. So then I've got Jackson versus Luton, Gusto versus Luton, Chilwell versus Luton, Turner versus United, Pickford versus Wolves, Estupiñán and João Pedro versus West Ham, Arsenal versus Fulham, and Bumo versus Crystal Palace at home, and then all the United players versus Nottingham Forest at home. And then, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Erling Haaland as well. So that would be my bench boost plan if I'm doing it. I think it looks pretty good so far. So I need to see if Gusto, he's not that close to a price rise, and neither is Jackson. So I feel like I've got the opportunity to do it, and I wasn't really planning on transferring out Havertz until game week 4. So it's quite an intricate idea, but I quite like it. Why don't I start Shaw ahead of James? I mean, it doesn't really matter because James is injured, so no matter what happens, Shaw will play. Does Walker start this week? I think it's very likely. If Stones and Diaz are out, it's likely. If let's say Diaz is playing, maybe it's a little bit less likely. Have I considered going for a 4-4-2 and bench Havertz? I mean, I don't think it's that bad of a fixture for Havertz, if I have to say that, because it's a very bad fixture for Shaw from a clean sheet probability point of view. Ben Taylor, do you think we will have to... Kanan, I know you really like Shaw, so you should play Shaw, and if Shaw does well, I'm sure you'll you'll tax me with the receipts on that one. Kinger, should I do Foden to Madison? I don't think so. I don't think it's like, let's be honest, price rises are not what get you points in FPL. I've seen plenty of managers who don't care about price do incredibly well in FPL. Capturing team value is not that important. You should always try to do transfers to maximize points. And personally, I think Foden is a fantastic pick for the time being. So I wouldn't really see Foden to Madison as being a good move for your own team. I actually think Foden, for example, last week I had Foden as a yellow asset, and then the KDB injury happened, and I have him now tiered as a green asset. And the simple reality is Foden with a lot of minutes is a very good pick. Best defensive option for 5.4 million. Maybe potentially potentially just a city defender like Akanji or Guardiola. I think would be quite good. Alternatively, you could just simply look at a 4.5 defender, such as Udogi or even Colwill or Rico Henry at that point in time. Or, of course, if you want to go even further down, Gusto. Bench Havertz, Pedro, or Jackson. I'd probably bench Havertz in that situation. I'm happy that I've steered you into the path of Gameweek 3. I was already on Gameweek 3 bench boost before you mentioned it in the chat, but good to see. Actually, did you mention Gameweek 3 bench boost in the chat? I'm having a debate with myself on who to put between Turner or Steele. I would still go with Turner. I thought Wolves were actually very, very good versus United on the attack, but once again, just clinical issues with someone like Cunha or Cunha. Vasily says, I hope João Pedro will hold good points. Me too, as team points are very template for most managers. Yeah, exactly. I think João Pedro is a huge difference in terms of the template, right? Just against the average manager. 27. I mean, it's still high because obviously a lot of people have been bringing him in, but still a good sort of differential. Chilwell, for example, he's not really differential, if we're being honest. I think at my rank tier, like everyone owns Chilwell somehow. Estupiñán, we're not getting any points there. Saka, probably the same thing. I mean, oh god, Saka's got monstrous ownership. I guess Fernandes is my differential, and Havertz is the true differential in my team. So I kind of like the idea of just punting on Havertz until Jesus comes back. Mirza says, do you recommend transferring out João Pedro for Nicholas Jackson? No, I don't recommend that at all. I wouldn't do that -4. Ben Taylor says, do you think we'll need to move James to Gusto? No, I mean, you can just sit on the price, you can just sit on FPL statistics and just react to that, in my opinion. Like, James isn't particularly close to a price fall, so there's no need to react to that. Just going to quickly check Twitter in terms of whether there's any leaks or not. Seems all good. Some people captaining Saka, as I can see. Whoa, this is a strong defense. I'd start Gabriel over Guardiola, if I'm being honest. Salah captain is very, very good this week. I mean, I would not be complaining if I had Salah. I would definitely be captaining him. Just gonna quickly retweet this. Let's have a look. Question wise, Shaw's top 3 left back in the world, even though he's awful this week. Play the fixture. Even then, he is awful. Yeah, I generally agree with your points. I'm not sure if he's a top 3 left back in the world. Maybe I'm gonna upset a couple people there. I mean, he could be. He could be. I'm just trying to think who I would sort of class in my top 3. I reckon Estupiñán is actually a top 3 left back in the world. Hot take. Lingard training with West Ham this week. Rumors Moyes will offer him a short-term contract. I mean, the thoughts are, I think that was the last time he was playing good football. So I hope it works out for both Lingard and Moyes. But that will be interesting for sure. Is Luis Diaz worth bringing in over Odegaard? I don't think so, right? Because you just have to think Game Week 3 is so bad for Liverpool, and Game Week 3 is so good for Arsenal. You're just going to want to go back to Odegaard, maybe. He is not even top 5. Are we talking about Shaw? Or are we talking about Purvis? Would you recommend me doing James to Colwell this week or next game week to beat the potential price decrease? I think you can wait for next week. It doesn't seem like James will actually get a price drop tonight. He's not even Game Week 3 Havertz captain. Why not? What's the slander for going Havertz? People don't know, but Havertz is going to hold versus Crystal Palace. best captain for this game week other than Haaland and Salah. I think I would still go with Saka or Watkins. You've made my decision. I mean, if you think Isak is the truth, fair play, Jun. Fair play. Where do you know me from, Soldier Boy? And Kedia captain. I think that's pretty mad, but good luck with that. Harry Maguire not in the squad. What do you mean by not in the squad, though? Sorry. Where did we get that? Is that a leak? Is Sam Johnstone and Turner a good combination? Yeah, it's a pretty good combination. Is it stupid to do Pedro to Watkins this week and then Watkins to... I think it's stupid. Like, I don't think these forwards are so good a waste that I really don't see the need to transfer them week on week. They're like, if you have a good pick in your FPL team, keep them in your team because you want to fix your problems, not your strengths. And so I wouldn't try to like maximize Jackson or maximize Pedro. I would try to fix your weaknesses in your FPL team. So for example, my weakness right now is I've got James and he's injured. So I've got to address that first before I even think about, oh, who has a better fixture? So, for example, like some people who are going Luis Diaz this week, I feel like we're losing sight of the medium term because, okay, Luis Diaz is a great game versus Bournemouth this week, but what are you going to do next week when he plays Newcastle? Maguire not traveling. Ooh, is that Lindelof stocks? I don't know, though. Did we actually get any confirmation that Lisandro Martinez is injured? Can you please let me know that guy? Gabriel or Henry? I'd go Gabriel. I'd even go Gabriel over Walker, to be honest. Would you transfer in Udogie or Gusto? I mean, I would transfer in Gusto for this week. He's got a better fixture than Udogie. Want to bench Gusto, Mbumo, Foden, Gabriel? I mean, I'd probably actually bench Gusto in that situation. You think Martinez is fine? What's making me keep Havertz? I'm just not the type of manager who reacts to one game week, and I think Arteta still rates him. I think Jesus is still injured, so the punt will continue. You feel a bit uneasy with Pedro. I mean, how good was that Wolves defense, though, versus United, if we're being honest? I thought United were... First of all, I think Brighton are a much better attack than United. I think Brighton is clearly a better attack. And I think United still penetrated that Wolves defense a couple times. I just thought that, for example, the operation of like Mount and Bruno just isn't working particularly well with the way that things are set up right now. So we'll see. But I definitely wouldn't look at that Wolves defense and say that they're some sort of impenetrable wall, if that makes sense. Is KDB Son a good move? I don't even think Son is a particularly good transfer. I think some people, particularly if they're newer to FPL, and obviously Son has a huge legacy in the Prem, but I mean, Son's underlying stats, his recent performances are so poor. I think you can actually, like, I would rather go Mbumo than Son, and price doesn't even matter to me, unless I knew Son was on penalties. But yeah, just based on what I know for now. Thoughts on Son? I do think he's not a great pick. I think I'd rather go for Madison, honestly, over Son, even if price wasn't an issue. So, any injury news? I don't think so. If playing Havertz this week, the thing is with Havertz, he is such a good game week 3. I'm just gonna keep him until game week 4. I mean, I don't really care if Havertz will get a price fall. I'll just play it out for game week 3. It's Arsenal's best fixture for a while. Fulham are such a bad defense. I'm just going to try and get that game from Havertz, and then I'll move away. I'll move away after that. Is Johnson and Turner a good combination? Yes, it is. I've answered that already. Sell Stones, who to buy? I think you can definitely go for a couple 5.0 picks within the City team, but it's not a great fixture with Newcastle in terms of Akanji and Guardiola. But at the same time, you can just simply go down to the 4.5s or the 4.0s. Gusto's a good pick at 4.5. I think Colwell, Henry, Udogie are all good picks. You just have to look at your team, see what sort of defenders you want for which game week as well, and then sort of make a decision. I would go for the 4.5. This is definitely my final squad for game week 2. Should I start Gabriel or Ruben Diaz? I'd start Gabriel. Ederson or Turner? I like Ederson personally, just because I think considering the teams that you're looking at, the keepers, and where they're playing in defense-wise versus the attacks they're playing versus, I think it's quite similar. It's one of Ederson's worst fixtures, but even a good fixture for Turner isn't particularly good. I'd go with Ederson because there's less ownership over Ederson, and it could be a very good differential for you. Ederson versus Newcastle, Turner versus... yeah, I would go... As I said, if you have Ederson in your team, I would still go Ederson because you've got less ownership and it could actually give you an edge. Like, for example, what if Sheffield score, I think probably around 65% of managers have Turner in terms of like active managers on Twitter and things like that. So it could be a good edge. Roll this week, then Pedro to Jackson, Matoma to Foden next week. Those are good moves, Oasis. Yeah, I really like those moves. Generally, good moves. Mirza says, I think Haaland would go. I mean, if you think Haaland will blank, then captain someone else. I'm not certain Haaland will blank, which is why I'm captaining him. Mr. Feather says, would you captain Saka? I'd probably captain Diaz for the differential. Cash or Estupiñán for Game Week 2. Estupiñán still. Flecken or Turner? I'd go Turner. Start Johnston or Pickford? I'd start Johnston. Oh, sorry, no. Tough, isn't it? I'd probably start Johnston, honestly, because I feel like the way things will go is probably Arsenal will pepper Crystal Palace with shots, which means good save opportunity for Johnston. I'm not really seeing clean sheets for either, so that's kind of why I'm leaning towards that. Gabri or Saliba. Saliba for sure, but you don't need to I don't think you need to transfer out of Gabriel if that's your situation. Madison over Fernandes. For this week, I'd probably go Madison, but just Game Week 3 is so good for Fernandes. I'm not too worried about having to make that move immediately in Game Week 2. I have Onana and Pickford as my goalkeeper options. No, you don't need to bring in anyone else for now. I think Onana is a very good keeper. Maybe you can actually transfer Pickford out in the future, because I don't really see Onana and Pickford as a particularly good rotation. So in that case, I'd probably just keep Onana as my starting keeper. As far as Richarlison or Jackson from Game Week 3 to 8, I think I like Jackson a bit more. Onana or Turner? Definitely Turner this week. What do you think about Andreas Fulham? I think Andreas is a great pick, for sure. I think Andreas is a great pick. And you'll see that he's obviously high on my cheat sheet. If Mitrovic is out, he's also on penalties, which is really, really nice for Andreas. And Mbeumo or Diaz, definitely Mbeumo for me, just for the medium term. Obviously, this is a better fixture probably for Diaz, but it's not that close between Mbeumo and Diaz. The next two Liverpool fixtures are very bad, in my opinion. Is it worth gambling with the Chilwell and Mbeumo captain? I don't think so, no. I mean, ultimately, KDB wasn't really on the pitch when Haaland scored his second goal. If you want to view it like that, it's not like KDB is absolutely essential to Haaland's holes. Does it diminish him as a pick a little bit? Yes, I think so, but it's still Haaland. Diaz or Madison? I mean, for this game, for Diaz, but I think long term Madison's better. Any big news for the deadline? James out, Stones out, and then Diaz 50-50. He might be ready, he might not be. That's exactly what Pep said. But City are probably tired from the Sevilla game, plus Forest are very good at home. Newcastle registered Newcastle registered 4.37 XG. So are you saying for the rest of the season that Newcastle's going to register 4.37 XG, though? Because that would make them probably the best attacking team in Premier League history. I do think it's a good game for both. This is Turner's best game of the season. I agree with you, but Turner's best game of the season doesn't mean much when we think that a lot of team models have Nottingham Forest as one of the two worst defenses in the Premier League. So that's sort of the way I'm viewing it, in my opinion. I would go with Turner if you're kind of scared about ownership, but still, City are a very, very strong defense. Do I start Gabriel over Colwell? Yeah, I would start Gabriel over Colwell. I'd start Saliba as well. Oh, Ben Taylor, thank you so much, and welcome to Manager. Pleasure to have you on board. Thank you so much for becoming a member, and I appreciate you being around the live stream today too. Thoughts on Thiago Silva in for James next week? I feel like we don't have to stretch towards Thiago Silva, because do we really think Thiago Silva's so much more nailed than some of the other the other Chelsea defenders? Might captain Isak. I mean, I think that's pretty crazy, but look, if you think Isak is the truth, go with your gut. I'm not going to tell someone that their gut is wrong, because the gut is just a gut. Joe 2 says, I have Richarlison, Reece James, and Gabriel. Who should I prioritize getting rid of? I would probably prioritize getting rid of Reece James, because he's the one who's injured. Ali Hijazi says, do I sell Salah next week for Son or Madison, or do I keep him? I would probably... Look, I think that there are a lot of good fixtures for Game Week 3. I'd probably sell Salah next week, if I'm being honest. But it also depends, are you doing 2 moves next week, or are you doing 1 move next week? Because I think 1 move from Salah out next week isn't very good. But if you've got 2 moves and you can actually strengthen another position with the Salah transfer, then that could make sense. Mosen says, I will jump from Andreas from Game Week 4. They have Arsenal and City. Yeah, makes sense. Mirza says, is there someone who will captain Trent? I don't know. I don't know too many managers with Trent in their teams. Who do you think is on pen? I can't even tell, because I believe Baker... said some stuff about how Madison could be the captain. But, I mean, given that sort of went into the bin, I've got no kind of claims or ideas on who's on cap. I think Son could be the penalty taker, if anything. We don't have any additional info. Richarlison, Madison, and Son, probably similar weightage on penalties. Captaincy poll. Yeah, let's do that. I mean, this is basically a Salah ownership test, isn't it? Let's do a captaincy poll. Why not? I'm just gonna do Haaland, Salah, and someone else for the poll. Start Shaw, Saliba. Definitely start Saliba for me. Is a Liverpool asset worth it? I don't think so, because we have to think at least medium term. Liverpool's 2 next games are pretty bad. I mean, Saka will count as someone else if you want to do that. I'm sorry, but I'm going Haaland, and you can go Captain Saka for sure. Paqueta betting investigation. Is that true? I'm gonna have to read up on this. Are we sure? Very interesting. Oh my, if the deal's collapsing though, he's gonna play for West Ham. I need to get him on fantasy draft. Give me a sec, guys. Gotta do some draft stuff. I think this is the league where I have Paqueta. Oh, this is not the league where I have Paqueta at all. I've got such a horrific team on this league. But all the managers are so clued in this league that it's tough. I believe this league, I could get Paqueta. But also West Ham's games are so poor. Still, though, Chelsea at home, probably better. Oh, I can just replace Danjuma, can't I? Let's get Paqueta in here. Because I'm pretty sure Danjuma isn't ready to start. I'll just get Danjuma on the weekend. Because I think Danjuma's not fit. I'll just do that. Okay. And hopefully no one notices that Danjuma's gone. All right, and then I'm back to FPL. Okay. Sorry about that. I had to do some things for other FPL game modes, as you know. If they're investigating it, then it's happened. Okay. Gareth says James DeGusto now because only 3 playing defenders and 1 is Gabriel. Yeah, I mean Son's penalty record is abysmal, but that doesn't really stop managers sometimes from picking. Like a lot of managers still pick the second best or third best penalty taker in the team. What's a good example of that? Fabinho had a 96% penalty record with 26 or 27 penalties taken, and Mo Salah was still the penalty taker for Liverpool. So yeah, I know Son's penalty record is poor, but there's still a chance he could get them, is all I'm saying. Turner or Emi Martinez? I'd probably play Emi Martinez if I'm being honest. Any leaks? Not that I can see. Watkins punt. It's a good captaincy punt. I don't have Watkins, so I'm not going to go for that punt. Obviously, I can't really do anything about that. Yeah. I'm just going to quickly read. Yeah, I mean, I saw the news about West Ham's Lucas Paqueta being investigated for betting breaches. I mean, it's kind of crazy though. Like when you're such an elite level footballer, how you'd still look towards betting. But yeah, apparently Chelsea have an interest in Balogun. Okay, I don't know. Every club apparently has an interest in Balogun. Oh well. Turner, Emi Martinez. Yeah, as I said, Emi Martinez. Martinelli and Mbumo. I'd definitely go. I mean, it's tough. I'd probably go Mbumo if I'm honest. I've gone Watkins captain. I mean, good luck with that. I'm going to close the poll. Pretty interesting poll. It shows, of course, that the Salah ownership isn't particularly high this FPL season, which is mad. But it's also very hard to reject Haaland because I think he is actually the closest thing that we've ever had to true permacap and arguably essential. I'm sure Haaland could do bad this week and people will say he's not essential, but you know, you really can't react to that when it's probably his worst fixture of the season, which is Newcastle. Albeit obviously that's at the Etihad as opposed to away. So any leaks, no leaks. Sell Gabriel or Diaz. I'd probably sell Diaz if I'm honest. I would actually play Gabriel this week. I don't think there's a need to really sell either player. What do you think of Saka captain? Promising again. I think it's probably the best captaincy I'd go with outside of Haaland. Him or Watkins are the 2 captaincies I like if we don't include Liverpool players. Because I'm assuming that we don't have Liverpool players. Becco says start Shaw or Gabriel. And what do I mean, I think Baldock is injured. And I think I would definitely start Gabriel. I mean, you can kind of get an idea of what I would do just because I've got Saliba on my team. So that's probably why I would do that. Why am I... Oh. Are you shouting, Joshua? Should I start Matoma or João I would start João Pedro, honestly. Whom to bench, Pedro, Matoma? I'd probably bench Matoma in that situation. I feel like if you got João Pedro and Mitoma, I'd probably bench Mitoma. Is it worth to take a hit to get Pedro before price change? I don't think so, no. People are sleeping on Bournemouth. I can't see Liverpool. I mean, I really rate the manager of Bournemouth because I'm a Real Madrid fan, and we got spanked by Acano last year, and I got a humbling there. So it'll be interesting, of course. I think Liverpool, the reality with Liverpool is that they're a very poor defense, but they're still definitely one of the better attacks in the Premier League, and that hasn't really changed too much. Hello, Madrid. Nice to see you around always. Start Rico Lewis or Gabriel? I'd probably still start Gabriel in this case. It's still a bad fixture for City. How many minutes a defender must play to earn? Just 60 minutes. I mean, as long as you hit the 60-minute mark, whatever time you come into the game, and you don't succumb to, or you don't concede a goal during those 60 minutes, or however much you play until you get subbed off, you'll get a clean sheet. So what's a good example of that? Let's say, Nick Pope last season, he had a red card versus Liverpool. I believe Dubravka came on, and then he played, or was it Karius? I can't remember who. I think Karius came on, and then Karius played like 65 minutes versus Liverpool. And even though Newcastle conceded earlier, he still got a clean sheet because he played 60 minutes where he didn't concede. So as long as you break that 60-minute mark and you don't concede during the time that you're on the field, you will get that clean sheet. As far as Eze or Gabriel, definitely Gabriel. Start Shaw or Henry. I'd start Shaw. Which of these should I drop? Akanji, Gabriel, Eze. I'd probably drop. It's tough. I'd probably drop Eze. Bench João Pedro or Eze. I'd probably bench Eze. It's not even close for me. I think João Pedro's got a much better game. Start Shaw, Foden. Definitely Foden. Watkins captain if you want to. I probably would still go Haaland, but I can understand going Watkins. I can understand going Saka. My defenders are Estupiñán, Gabriel, Baldock, Stones, and Lisandro Martinez. Should I transfer someone out? Okay, I think you do actually have a couple issues in your squad because Lisandro Martinez. I mean, I'd still probably transfer out Stones because Stones is actually injured, and that's going to give you the most money in the bank to make a transfer. If you can get towards Chilwell, that's what I would try and do. Does Julian Alvarez absolutely he becomes a good option in Game Week 3. We just need to sort of understand what this muscular issue is because there was some news that he had a muscular issue that actually prevented him from playing more than 15 minutes in the Super Cup game. So let's watch what happens there. Keep Gross or buy someone else. I'd probably go Mbumo if you can. I should do a video where you explain how FPL gives points. I mean, I could probably do that at the start of the season. I think at this point in time, it might not do so well, but definitely next season, I would think about it. Gabriel or Colwell, I'd still start Gabriel. Hey, Fran, do you think Colwell or Saliba? Definitely Saliba. Irola gives me nightmares. Absolutely. Diaz or Mitoma, I'd probably start Mitoma. Eze or Mitoma, I'd start Mitoma. It's a very bad game for Eze. It's Arsenal. Bruno, Pedro, or Mbumo to start. I'd probably do Pedro. I'd probably do Bruno and Mbumo, honestly. What should I do with Akanji? I'd keep him, but because a -4 to Chilwell doesn't really seem worth it. Also, if you guys could like and subscribe, that would be lovely. We've hit 100 likes, so that's fantastic. Thank you guys so much for being here. 31, never give up. Diaz captain. Yeah, I wouldn't go for a Diaz captain. I think Diaz is already a big enough differential if you think about it like that. Hey, Fran, bench Gabriel for Cash. Yeah, that makes sense. I think Cash is a good game. Start Azir Akanji. I'd probably start Akanji. Mitoma versus Bruno. I'd go Bruno. Diaz is injured. I mean, Diaz is not 100% injured. I think Pep actually said at the end of the press conference that there might be a chance Diaz could play. Play Ederson or Turner. I think it's a 50-50. Turner is what a lot of us managers will be going for, but that's also because a lot of us managers don't have Ederson. I think it's a situation where you're sort of comparing City playing versus a very tough offense versus, Sheffield United being a very poor offense, but then actually Nottingham Forest also being a very, very, very poor defense. So I actually like the idea of going for Ederson if I owned Ederson, just because the ownership's lower. Hi, Fran. Janksta, hope you're doing well, my friend. It has been a while indeed. I hope you are sort of all set for Game Week 1 and Game Week 2. Hopefully not too many injuries like myself. I've had the James injury over here, so I will be addressing that in Game Week 3. Actually, I was talking earlier about how I wanted to bench boost. Ezra Matoma, definitely Matoma. C-Max, but I'm not sure what the original question is. Am I mad to consider captaining Watkins? Absolutely not. I think it's a good pick. Is it worth taking -4 to get Chilwell in over Stones? I don't think so. Should I transfer Eze for Mbumo? I do think so, yes. Is it best to start both United mids, have a dilemma with either Mbumo or Alvarez on the bench? Ooh, I mean, I would be tempted to bench Bruno this week. Why is no one playing three forwards? I think it's just, people just like the flexibility of the midfielders, particularly with the injuries that we had to the forwards. So once Jesus and Nkunku were out, I feel like a lot of people wanted to go 3-5-2. But I actually have a couple of friends of mine who are going 3-4-3, who are still very good managers. Some people who have gone for Watkins and Jackson, some people who have gone for Watkins and João Pedro, or Jackson and João Pedro. So I don't think there's anything wrong with 3-4-3. I think both formations are good. I would still say a little bit more flexibility in the midfield. João Pedro, your captain, that's pretty ballsy. So good luck with that. Nunez or Eze. It's pretty tough. I'd probably go Nunez just to punt on it. It is a much easier fixture, anyways. But I would think about selling Darwin after this week if he doesn't start again. Jankster says he's mostly rolling his transfer. Yeah, that makes sense. What's the captaincy bias towards? Theodore says, hi, Fran, just tuning in. Any important news like Gabriel Stones like last week? The only news is Stones is out, James is out, Diaz 50-50. He may start, he may be not ready for the game. That's pretty much it in terms of the big players. I think Baldock is also out in terms of some important news for FPL benches. Saka, Watkins, Vice. I'd probably Saka, Vice, but they're very similar. Just having Pickford or Areola to start. I'd probably still go with Pickford. Gabriel/James over Henry. I would go Gabriel over Henry. Also scary to not have a Liverpool. I understand the fear over Liverpool, but ultimately Liverpool have bad fixtures, right? I just want to double check my team just to make sure it's all in order, given that we have a deadline very, very quickly. Yeah, happy with my team. But as I was saying, I'm quite interested in going for Gusto plus Jackson and then just going for a bench boost game week 3. That could be quite interesting. But in terms of Liverpool, I mean, let's go look at Luis Diaz, for example. Ultimately, if you go for Liverpool player this week, you're still having to deal with Newcastle and Villa, which I think are tougher games. So it doesn't feel that good to go Liverpool, in my opinion. Should I start João Pedro or Mbumo? I start Mbumo. Bench Pickford, James, Diaz, Mubama. I think that's the correct bench because none of those players seem particularly great this week. Diaz could play and that could make him good, but I think your bench is good. Yeah, Nathan, if you could not spam, that'd be helpful. But yeah, I have answered anyways. Should I start a Luton player so my best bench points get subbed in? Okay, so you talk about bench wanking. Yeah, I mean you could do if you want to. Alvarez in starting 11, rumored to be injured. I mean, he's not injured, I believe. He just has some sort of muscular issue, which means that he might miss out this game week, and then he could be fit for the next one. But yeah, I'd probably not put him in the starting 11. The bench doesn't seem great, though. I'd probably still start Alvarez if I'm honest, because if he has a muscular issue and he's not ready to play, I don't know. Maybe he could be put out for 15 minutes again, but you'd hope that he's fit for the weekend. Should I play both and take out Martinelli? I would not take Martinelli out. I would just bench out Pedro. Would you bench out of Bruno? I'd probably bench Bruno in that situation, Marco. I mean, it's close. I'd probably bench Bruno or Pedro, maybe. It's very, very close, though. What to do with Trossard? I mean, I would look about I would say give him this week. If he doesn't play, just transfer him out. No leaks today. I mean, we didn't really have any good games for leaks, if we're being honest. And that's the deadline, guys. I hope you guys made your transfers and all. You should have wildcarded, Yun. Why is that? Well, anyways, thank you guys so much for being around in the stream. I am actually currently on holiday, so I think I will be heading straight towards the pool after this because yes, of course we have some EPL games to worry about, but I don't think I'll be watching for a Nottingham Forest clean sheet if I'm honest. I mean, no Salah's fine. I was just saying to some people that on game week 3 and 4, Liverpool don't have great games. The full strength of getting a Liverpool asset is purely just having him in game week 2 and maybe captaining him. I just don't think it's worth it though, because all your United and Arsenal picks have good games in game week 3, and technically if you started with Salah, it's gone good so far, right? Because Rashford and Bruno blanked game week 1. You can have 2 free transfers for game week 2, but yeah, I don't think they're lovely games. I mean, Villa is a good fixture, yes, but still probably one of their tougher ones. I know Liverpool at home at any time is good, but still. Thoughts on getting Foden in Game Week 3? I think it makes sense, but for my team, I think it makes sense to go for Foden in Game Week 4. Either way, the thing is, I don't like the idea of just going simply for a Liverpool asset just because of one good fixture. Because, yeah, I mean, Arsenal last season proved to us that they're more than capable of matching anyone in this Liverpool team outside of Salah. And ultimately, Salah is priced at a point where whenever you compare Salah, you've got to compare, let's say, Saka plus someone else. The additional money in the bank, the 4 million that you'd get, or even if you compare it to Rashford, the additional 3.5. So, thank you so much, Oscar. Thank you for the raid. Appreciate it. Hope you guys are all doing well. Hope you guys have all enjoyed Focal's stream. This is awesome. How was Focal's deadline? What did Focal do? Did he roll the transfer? Please do thank Oscar for me. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you guys so much. He took a -12. Yeah, I don't believe that at all. He rolled. That's cool. Did he bench anyone? Any sort of big benching decisions? I had James on the bench, so that was that. Focal kicks me to you. Thank you so much, Oscar. Sell yourself to us, Fran. Well, I mean, I'm obviously another FPL YouTuber as well. Take quite a bit of an analytical approach. My sort of main FPL series is the cheat sheet, so I sort of just look at every price point, valuing the best picks that I see in each position, and obviously just looking ahead to the next 6 to 8 game weeks for fixtures and things like that. He benched Haaland. There were actually a couple game weeks last season when I remember Oscar benched Haaland. Yeah, I had a good stream, definitely. Mikey, thank you so much for the donation. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a lovely weekend as well. I hope the deadline was all good for you. Sorry about owning Diaz. I do hope he actually ends up being fit for Game Week 3 and that you can actually keep him in your team as well. Leanne, nice to see Leanne around. A couple of people who are subscribed as well who are on Focal Stream. That's awesome. Eze or Matoma. I think for this week it's definitely Matoma, but long term Eze is probably a better pick. He sold Haaland for Højlund. I've got Højlund actually in my draft in FPL, like the draft game mode where you play with your friends and you kind of just pick picks. So I'm hoping he actually comes back rather quickly, but I know he's getting back soon. I mean, my team, I don't have it to hand, but I do have it on Twitter. So I'll just quickly show you what my team is. It's basically this. So I've gone for Turner. This is not my team. My bad. Sorry. So this is my team. I'm going for Havertz still. A couple of people will question that in the chat, but I will probably sell Havertz as soon as Jesus comes back or around Game Week 4 when it makes sense. I was talking to the stream actually that I might, because I've got 1 million in the bank in this sort of transfer situation, and I rolled my transfer this week. So the idea really is to go for a Game Week 3 bench boost. And I'll probably be going from James to Malo Gustos because obviously James, he's got an injury issue. We'll have to deal with that situation. And James to Malo Gusto will give me 2.5 in the bank, which actually allows me to go from Taylor, my 4.5 price locked forward, to Jackson. So next week, I should be bench boosting Game Week 3. But for the meantime, obviously in Game Week 2, decided to play Turner over Pickford. Went for Estupinian, Saliba, Chilwell. Obviously, I really wanted to play James over Saliba. But of course, the news was pretty sad, pretty depressing. But I've rolled the transfer anyways because I've got a really strong bench. And worst case, I've got Shaw who can fill in on anyone who misses the game week here. And then with Havertz, yeah, I mean, he was a punt that, as I said, I went for because I wanted to see what would happen if Havertz could get some minutes in the 9 position. And that's pretty much why I've gone for this team setup here. And obviously, I've gone for João Pedro too from game week 1. Someone that I really, really liked the idea of. And I've got a bit of money in the bank so that I can go to Jackson. And now, obviously, with James being injured, I have got flexibility there. It's too early for bench boost. I agree, but actually, game week 3 has such good fixtures for a lot of players. It's quite interesting to me. Do you think using wildcard in game week 4 is... I think that's too early. Especially if your team does look good, then there's really no need to wildcard early. I think the earliest wildcard that I would really consider is wildcard 9, just because there's a pretty big swing there where, especially for all of us who went for Arsenal and United assets in the midfield, that's a very, very easy time to go towards a Salah sort of draft back into your usual FPL template from years past. So that's kind of how I feel about the wild card. And then obviously, if let's say I have the ability to move to Salah a little bit earlier, or I think the wild card's unnecessary, then I'll probably just wild card closer towards the end of game week 20, and then just sort of play it around game week 16 onwards, and then sort of maximize that as well. Azir Matoma, I think you've asked the question a couple of times, Charlie. I mean, I like Eze for the long term, but of course it's a very bad fixture versus Arsenal, so I'll go with Matoma this week. And yeah, if you guys would like the stream, subscribe. I would absolutely love it. Your cheat sheet series are really good. Thank you very much, Riza. He sold. What do you think about Caicedo and or Lavia? Because they're both. I mean, I think Caicedo and Lavia are going to help Chelsea as a team. Maybe not so much Lavia because he is a young prospect, but in terms of what Caicedo can bring from the defensive point of view, I think he'll just improve Chelsea. But it doesn't really mean he's a good FPL pick. I think Enzo is actually an interesting pick. If James is out, I mean, there's a good chance he could be the penalty taker, and with set pieces, that could make him a good 5.0 pick. And previously, we were thinking that Reece James, Chilwell, and Jackson is your best triple up for Chelsea. But if Reece James is gone, it depends on Gusto's minutes, really. But if Gusto's not a reliable pick in terms of minutes, then Enzo could actually be that best pick, that third best pick for Chelsea. This is Focal's team. Yeah, I was looking at Focal's team. It's too early for bench boost. Been watching you since your channel was named Total Tactics Football. Oh, thank you so much, Mohammed. Appreciate that. Yeah, the channel has grown a lot by then, and obviously I've become an FPL channel too. Gabriel or Kanji. I mean, I would go for Gabriel this week just because of the tough fixture. And I still see Gabriel playing. I was talking about it in one of my earlier videos this week in terms of the preview, but you've got Gabriel who will still play in many teams. I think Arteta specifically mentioned the Christmas tree formation. So that sort of back five that Nottingham Forest played. So highly likely that Crystal Palace being a back four could just see Gabriel return back to the team no matter what. Game week 8 to 9 wild card. Yeah, seems very logical, Paul. Thoughts on Evan Ferguson up front? Yeah, I mean, the issue, of course, is that De Zerbi has mentioned that there's a lot of rotation to be done between Welbeck and Ferguson. So I think I like Evan Ferguson as a young prospect, but in terms of the minutes, still probably not consistently good enough. Oscar's Army. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thoughts on Madison? I mean, he's a great pick. I definitely would love to go for Madison if I had a chance to sort of revisit the past and get off of Havertz. But since I'm on the Havertz train, because Havertz's game week 3 is so good versus Nottingham Forest, or sorry, not Nottingham Forest, but Fulham at home, I still like the idea of going for game week 4. Is Hakpo or Gakpo really worth it? I don't think so. I think João Pedro is a better pick. I would rather spend the money that I got, from going João Pedro and then just spending the rest of it elsewhere. And in fact, because João Pedro's fixtures aren't particularly good after game week 3, I like the idea of just going for Jackson in game week 3. So that's quite helpful. And Nketiah's best value in the game. I mean, for a short term, maybe you could say that, but I think João Pedro is better than Nketiah. João Pedro is a penalty taker for a Brighton team that are very, very good attack. You and FPL Henry carrying the FPL. Do you mean Harry or FPL Henry? Who will highest score this week? I mean, probably Salah is the best guess or the easiest guess. You had James from game week 1. I had James from game week 1. Yeah, I didn't buy him I didn't buy him this week. I had him from game week 1 on the bench. You benched Foden for Alvarez. Ooh, are you not worried about the muscular issue that they talked about? Ben Taylor says you and Oscar are the 2 best FPL channels. I appreciate it. That's high praise, of course, because Oscar's a great FPL channel and content creator. How much in the bank? I've got 1 million in the bank in my team. So the way it works is, as I said, I can go for Malo Gusto. What's my highest ever rank? So it was just last year's rank, which was 8,164. I've only technically been playing 3 full seasons. So I finished 50k, 95k, and 8k so far. And before that, I had a 6 million finish because I played 3 game weeks. So doesn't really count, I would say. And Nketiah is the most complete striker in the league. I can't tell if you're trolling me right now, Charlie. I will say it was quite funny when I saw Mikel Arteta's press conference and he was talking about the situation where Nketiah spoke to him and said, "You're blind, Gaffer," and that was hilarious. FPL Focal, thank you, Gary, for joining as part of the raid. Is Onana a risk? I don't think he's a risk at all. I mean, ultimately, I was looking at Shaw versus Wolves, and I own Shaw. And I was pretty dismayed at his positioning. And part of it, that too, I think, is just the growing pains of adjusting towards Mount in the team and what will happen with United, trying to integrate Mount, because a lot of it too was just Casemiro being isolated He was not really being supported, and at the same time, that didn't really allow United to progress the ball as much as they wanted. And Shaw also was not in many attacking positions. In fact, I think Shaw put in so many last-ditch tackles that I was a bit concerned, because Wan-Bissaka was the one who actually got the assist in that game, which is obviously usually the opposite to what you expect in terms of the fullbacks and what they offer in FPL. What's your favorite Premier League team? So I'm half Spanish. My dad's from Madrid, so I do support Real Madrid. But in terms of the Premier League, I don't support a team per se now. One of my best friends is an Arsenal fan, so I suppose I have a small affinity towards Arsenal. But going back into the day when I was pretty young and watching the Premier League as a young kid, I was a big fan of that sort of Frank Lampard, Chelsea team with Drogba and the like. So I haven't really kept the affinity towards Chelsea just because I liked a lot of their players, including Ballack and things like, and other players like Carvalho. But since then, I haven't really been following Chelsea that much or that avidly, so I wouldn't call myself a Chelsea fan. You're clearly forgetting Man United at home last season. The back heel finished to win the game. That back heel finished to win the game. That's something only he and Haaland can do. Okay, Charlie, that's some high class troll. What I will tell you though is Nketiah had, I think, 8.9 xG and scored 4 goals or something like that. I'm proper Chelsea. That's funny. I mean, I look. You guys are doing some crazy transfer business, so it's a nice time to be a Chelsea fan. I'm sure. Definitely better than Liverpool, I would say. Is Watkins plus Diaby a good idea? I think so. I mean, my earliest FPL rank is like 2018-19, but I skipped one of the seasons. One of the seasons I only played 3 game weeks, so I really only started playing FPL in 2021. I played the full season then, and then since then I've been playing FPL very avidly. And I think I've also improved my general approach to FPL since then. So that's been quite a fun process, taking a bit more of an analytics based approach as well. And yeah, I've enjoyed FPL a lot. We saw something similar with United last year. It took them time. Is it worth dropping? Look, the thing is, I don't like the idea of dropping Bruno until game week 4. I mean, we even had some concerns with Bruno last season when he was dropping deep. If you guys remember when Casemiro was injured, there were games when Bruno was playing super deep, but he still ended up being a relatively good pick. Messi, Ronaldo. I mean, even as a Real Madrid fan, I would say Messi. But are you asking me about what my personal preferences or who I think is better? -4 in Henry and Mbumo. I wouldn't do a -4 for the Brentford assets. Accidentally couldn't captain Salah in time with the rush. It's on Haaland though. I mean, Haaland's a perfectly good captain, Alfie. I think you know that as well. And yeah, I've got to say though that Salah's the better captain this week. I'm pretty scared that I don't own Salah, but I think the idea, as I said, is with all the Liverpool assets, you've just got to think about game week 3 for Newcastle, which is basically the time when Arsenal and United assets are good. Your answer is fine. Don't ruin it. Content looks promising. We have to build a channel. Thank you, Derek. Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I've been working hard on the content. Been on TikTok this season and a bit more just activity on Twitter on my part. So that's something that I've tried my best to do, and will continue to try grow the channel this season. Hopefully build on last year's good rank and just develop. Raynell says, hi, hope you're doing well too. Are you guys excited for this upcoming game watching? How many people actually have Turner? Content has improved over the last 3 seasons for sure. I think so too. I think if you look at some of my old videos, the audio quality was bad. Camera was bad. Obviously, I'm on vacation now, which is why the setup isn't particularly good. But I'm trying my best here. Obviously, just in a hotel room. Just popped by to say hello, Fran. Paolo, thank you so much. Hope you're doing well. Almost everyone, including me. You've got Turner, Leanne. That's awesome. Thanks for your videos. Thank you, Paolo. Appreciate that. Thoughts on bringing Foden for Game Week 3? I think it's a very good time to actually go for Foden. And honestly, the KDB injury has really made Foden a good pick. This season will not finish until you reach 50k subscribers. Look, I hope I do so well as to get 50k subscribers, Abdullah. Thank you so much. Turner was Dark Horse captain. Sorry. Are you saying he's a captaincy pick? He's got 9 points on the cards. I mean, the scary thing about someone like Salah is that he's very well capable of getting into double digits for Bournemouth. But Iraola is a very, very competent manager. As I was saying, as a Real Madrid fan last season, we got absolutely stunned by Rayo Vallecano. And actually, one of the key players in that game, too, is actually now a Real Madrid player in Fran Garcia. Alfie, so the league code, you can actually see it right above me, I believe. It's DJV. Let me just quickly have a look. Yeah, DJVXXX. I'm not sure how many people exactly are in the league. I am doing a slightly interesting sort of prize pool, which is just if you're subscribed and you win the league or you're top three, I'll happily pay out some free cash prizes at the end of the season. It is what I've done. Soldier Boy, thank you so much. Captaining Salah, of course, black screen, very, very sensible. He was more of a home manager, though, from what I saw. Yeah, I get the idea there. I mean, the thing is, too, like, all football teams, are better at home. I know Arsenal, for example, had more clean sheets away from home last season, but you'll still see, for example, that their expected goals conceded was better at home than away. So generally, if you look at, let's say, La Liga, Liga, Serie A, and Premier League, all teams will have more XG at home and less XG conceded at home too. So compared to away, of course. And generally, actually, I believe Spain is the league where home and away is the biggest difference in terms of XG for each team. So not actually surprising to me that Iraola is a bit more of a home manager looking at Rayo Vallecano. Charlie says, all I'm taking away from that 8.3 XG is that he has got the best attacking position in the league. I mean, Darwin exists, if we want to talk like that. His XG per 90 isn't that good, though, if we're being honest, Charlie, when we talk about attacking position, isn't it? I appreciate your tweets, too. It's nice to stay updated on Twitter. Thank you, Soldier Boy. Who to sell with 2.5 million in the bank next week, Pedro or Mitoma? I definitely like the idea of going out of Mitoma, but it really depends on who you're bringing in. So, for example, who are your transfer targets? Because with Pedro, someone like Jackson becomes a much better transfer target. I'm not sure 2.5 million plus Mitoma is going to get you anyone that you really like. So it also just depends on who your transfer target is. What are your thoughts on Xavi saying, I understand why no one watches this league? I mean, I kind of get the idea. I think obviously La Liga, in of itself has struggled to market the league compared to the Premier League. So the Premier League did a great job in the 2000s of sort of garnering interest internationally. And then I think style of play, which Xavi has also talked about a couple of times. Yeah, it's an interesting one because I know Barcelona do play well, but they also struggled in Europe too last season. So, hey, we also need to perform a bit better in Europe, I suppose, to get some viewership back to make people think that we're a more competitive league, I suppose. But also, if you look at the La Liga new logo, that is horrific as well. So it just shows clearly that the marketing isn't particularly good. The FPL Fran logo is better than the new La Liga. I mean, the new La Liga logo is one of the worst logos I've seen in my life. How is swapping on bench done if your player doesn't play on your team? So I think if one of your players doesn't play, it just gets automatically replaced by the first player on your bench. Fran, what about Salah's? I mean, I don't believe in curses, right? So I would love the idea for Salah to blank, but it is what it is. Trusting Gusto right now. He blanked against Bournemouth last season. I mean, he didn't even blank. He literally missed a penalty, which is worse than a blank. Have I discussed Sanchez versus Gusto? I haven't really discussed Sanchez versus Gusto at all, but I would definitely go for Gusto. If it's true that, for example, Chelsea aren't looking for another right back in the transfer market. Kamal says, roll the transfer, have Trent Alexander-Arnold and Salah game week 2. Both will be sold next week if no return. Yeah, that's a very sensible move, to be quite honest. I mean, I was struggling to see many drafts with both Trent and Salah, but I get the idea. And honestly, if you get the opportunity to move out of them, you can probably help strengthen your squad over the next few game weeks. I would probably not sell both of them, though, just because, with the money in the bank that you would get back from transferring one of them out, maybe Trent in particular, you could actually benefit quite a bit going forwards. I'd probably keep Salah next week and then actually just think about going out of Trent and then actually maybe strengthening another midfield or another forward pick for yourself. And then maybe, you can actually keep Salah for the short term and see what happens. What's my trip strategy this year? I haven't really planned any sort of intricate wildcards, but I was talking earlier in the chat about how I'm tempted to wildcard 9 as one of the first opportunities to wildcard. And if it seems like my team is actually going to do very well, beyond 9, then I'll just keep the wildcard and then probably wildcard towards the back half of that first wildcard window, which is going to be game week 20, which is your sort of limit. So maybe around game week 16, 15, around that territory, if it seems like I don't need to wildcard 8/9. And in terms of bench boost, I'm very tempted to just play it next week. And yes, the new La Liga logo is, I don't know. It's something that a kid could have worked on if they were just asked to write LL out in a somewhat intricate way. But yeah, I don't really know what they were thinking with that. I think in some aspects, the league has done well with, for example, the actual product itself on camera. If you look at, for example, the way that they have improved with their sort of different point of view shots, I think they've improved in that. But for a long time, we were struggling to make matches look entertaining, because I think even if you look at the Premier League matches, what they do is they saturate the color of the grass, and sometimes that actually makes it very, very appealing to look at times. I feel like Derek and Charlie are both in on this in terms of Nketiah. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, I was actually also planning to bench boost 3. The Saudi League is actually entertaining. I've not watched much of the Saudi League. I watched the Saudi League All-Stars match versus PSG. That's the only sort of Saudi League action that I've seen. But I hear what you're saying in terms of the fans being engaged. But yeah, I haven't watched the product myself yet, and I don't see myself watching the product, because I think that the times the matches are on don't seem to be very, very pleasant for me. I have been watching a bit more of Serie A just because I'm getting into Serie A fantasy this season. Oh, I appreciate that, Turl 1995. Good content so far. Thank you, and thank you guys all so much for watching. Chiseled Planet, thank you so much for the donation. You went Captain Diaz and have Jota. So that's interesting. I probably would have captained Jota because Jota has really, really good expected goals per 90 for a Liverpool player. Can I watch the match tonight? I could do... You know what? We could switch this live stream up to a watch along if you guys want to do that. You'd find more engagement in any Sunday league game, let's be honest. Yeah, point taken there. Yeah, we could do a watch along for sure. But sorry, going back to the point, Chisel Planet. Thank you so much for the donation once again. I think going for a Liverpool player is very sensible, because this is one of the worst weeks for captaining Haaland. So I can understand going for a Liverpool player. As I said, I probably would be a little bit more tempted by Jota, but that's interesting. Jason says, new subscriber Fran. Looking forward to your content in my feed. Got to get back to work now. Take care, Jason. Thank you so much for subscribing as well. Yeah, let's do a watch along. I'll just quickly edit the sort of stream, and I'll just call it a watch along. Nketiah is the answer to all Arsenal's problems. Didn't seem to be the case last season when Jesus was injured, I must say. So Leanne, do you play Champions League fantasy as well? I'm quite curious, because I definitely have some time to do some more content in terms of other fantasy games this year, but I was thinking of doing Champions League instead. But do let me know what you think, because I feel like Serie A fantasy is definitely a growing game. I feel like Charlie and Derek are the same person. This is what I'm feeling right now. Newcastle are going to be great. I think we can already confirm that. Do I have plans to go Trippier and Isak? Yes, I do. Because if I go Jackson, then actually going for Trippier and Isak is rather simple. Diaz was the most forward player against Chelsea. I hear that. Obviously, things like that can change game to game. But yeah, see your point. Quick question. Should I sell Gabriel next week? I'm tempted. I would be tempted to sell Gabriel, but in all honesty, it's a very good fixture for Gabriel. Still Nottingham Forest at home. Sorry, it's still Fulham at home. Did any leaks happen? Nothing at least that really concerns us. You might have to downgrade Rashford to get to Isak and Trippier. I mean, look, if I went for the bench boost, I can quite easily just go Jackson to Isak as soon as I make another move, right? So if, let's say, I binge out Pedro off for someone else, I could do that. Oh, that's awesome, Leanne. 8K in the world. I think there's 3 million managers playing, so that's an incredible rank. So congratulations on that. That's awesome. Have I played UCL Fantasy? I play UCL Fantasy most years, but like Andy, I get so busy with work because a lot of the deadlines for UCL Fantasy are always at like 6 or 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. And I'm usually, or no, sorry, actually, they have some early starts, don't they? Because they have some games playing in some different countries sometimes at 5:30, and because I'm stuck at work, I usually I'm not able to react to the deadline, and I always forget to sort of rotate my team around. But this season I've got a little bit more flexibility in terms of my work and daily life, so that should change. So that should be good. Yeah, I'm definitely down for the watch along. I mean, we've already got the effectively 20 minutes until. I mean, I don't do YouTube full time. No, I don't earn enough from YouTube, unfortunately, to do it full time. But I think it would be the goal in the future if it at all could be possible. And I'm working towards it. I would say just on top of my full time job. So try fantasy Bundesliga. Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I've as I said, I don't have enough time to invest into that many leagues, but Champions League and Serie A are what I'll be playing this season on top of FPL. I'll have a look at Bundesliga. I wasn't actually aware that there was an official Bundesliga game mode compared to something like Serie A. What were my points last week? 77 points. You faith in my channel? I appreciate that, Soldier Boy. And obviously that's really the dream, of course, to have it grow. I really respect the people who didn't go for a Haaland captaincy. It's always very tough to go against Haaland. I think I went against Haaland quite a few times last season, if I'm being honest. I even sold Haaland in Game Week 15. If you guys remember the week when he was benched last season, I also binned him. Um, but it didn't always work out for me last season going against Haaland. I went for Salah captaincy versus Nottingham Forest. This was the game when Nottingham Forest beat Liverpool, and this was the game when Haaland also scored a brace versus Brighton, if you guys remember. Um, Growing even more than Uri has. No, I appreciate that, Soldier Boy. Leanne, also 77. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 77 points fan club. How do you feel about Andy asking? I mean, look, I feel like for Andy, that was particularly stressful for him, and he got a bit of backlash from the community that he definitely didn't expect or never received, given that he's actually always been very reasonable. I'm pound for pound the best FPL content creator. I appreciate that. 70 BC of Pep. Look, the thing about Haaland, right, is in terms of minutes, he's one of the only football players in the world where when you're predicting minutes, it doesn't really mean much, because when he plays 60 minutes, it could very well be a game where he scores a hat trick. So he's one of the only football players who actually gets subbed off for having a good performance, in my opinion. I definitely think Haaland's goals could suffer due to an injury to KDB. I think we're already seeing that the team is struggling a little bit to create some goals. We'll have to hope that they can actually include more players. Is Reece James definitely out? Yeah, it's been confirmed in press conferences. And two easy clips. Nice to see you around. Hello. Just gonna quickly look at some news if we don't get. I mean, it is very plausible that Haaland will only play 65 minutes, but we'll see. Hasn't Haaland never scored more than one goal a game without KDB? I think we also forget, though, that actually even scoring one goal in a Premier League game is not usually meant to happen. Chiseled Planet. Did you give a gifted sub on Fogel's channel? What's your team for this week? Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. I wonder if the website's refreshed. Oh, no, it hasn't. Just keep it on my team for now, I suppose. So this is my team. You took the risk in Captain Saka. Some of the people here are extremely, extremely ballsy, and I respect that. As soon as Jesus came back for Arsenal, they won 4 out of 10 games with Nketiah. With Nketiah as a starter, they won 6 out of 11. Yeah, I hear you there. I hear you there. The facts speak for themselves. What games do you expect clean sheets? For this week specifically, I feel like the odds aren't particularly good. Maybe I would say Arsenal, maybe Liverpool as well. Those are the 2 games where I only see clean sheets. The rest are actually pretty bad. What is my second favorite Spanish team? Malaga, because a friend of mine supports them. They're in the 3rd division. God bless them. How did I do last week? I got 77 points for this team. So I rolled the transfer this week, basically. Is captaining Saka a good call? I think it's the best call outside of Haaland. I would never have the confidence to do that game week 1. Triple captained Haaland last week. I feel like a lot of people triple. I think like something like 276,000 managers triple captain last week. I feel like people just like doing the triple captain for the best pick on game week 1 just because it allows them to get a good early rank to start, and it doesn't sort of soil your team in a way. You heard Malaga got robbed in the 2013 UCL. Interesting. Sounds like copium with Nketiah. To be honest, he almost 100% doesn't start. I mean, let's be honest. I do think Nketiah is not. I think Nketiah, obviously, when he trains hard, he'll find himself in the Arsenal team if Jesus is out. But very hard to see him actually being in the Arsenal starting team when Jesus is fit. The Chelsea conceded a free kick. Ward-Prowse. I believe Ward-Prowse is not expected to start this game, no? Forest lineup out. Yeah. I mean, no real surprises for this Forest team, no? Predict the top 3 and bottom 3. Why is Andy Carroll trending? I've got no idea. I'll need to have a good look at that. I hear you in terms of Trossard versus Havertz, or even Trossard versus Nketiah. But to be honest, like I have to just go back to we're not Mikel Arteta, and sometimes he sees things that we don't, and so I know, for example, a lot of people don't rate Kai, including myself, but still, it's very obvious that someone like Mikel loves him. So those are the situations where I would say try to think about what the manager thinks as opposed to what you yourself think about certain players in FPL in those instances, because it could actually do well for you. Like some people might be biased against Erling or Salah because they're so popular as picks, but you've just got to think how to maximize points in FPL as opposed to, do I worry about ownership? Do I worry about how I rate a certain player? That sort of thing. If they're going to play full 90 minutes. Speaking of balls, I wonder how. I think he flashed his YouTube channel, which won't be happening on this live stream, mind you. Turner starts, yeah. I think we're going to watch 90 minutes of Turner trying to keep a clean sheet, which is interesting, to say the least. Do you think Gabriel will get playing time? I do think he will, especially in the Crystal Palace game. I do think the tactical structure really makes a difference, because ultimately it was a tactical decision to bench Gabriel, and Nottingham Forest play a back 5. So, early signs where you shouldn't overreact too much. I would say, of course, Gabriel would play versus Crystal Palace, but we'll have to look. A lot of people are definitely rooting for Turner. I think like a lot of Johnstone owners, Onana owners, Pickford owners are all going for Turner this week, as opposed to playing their starting keepers. So we have a lot of faith in him. Trossard again, not a striker. I mean, to be honest, so when Arsenal, or when Mikel was explaining Havertz's position, he was a 10 when Trossard came on. So we'll see. Balogun not good enough. I mean, Balogun's very, very likely leaving to another team. Doesn't really seem like he wants to stay in Arsenal anyways, because he's not going to be the starting player, and he's probably still behind Nketiah in the pecking order. Although he had an absolutely great season in Liga, which also doesn't really mean too much because so did Lacazette. As far as Wolves, I mean, in general, they looked good as a team in general, I would say. So I'd probably still back Sheffield United, Nottingham Forest, and Luton Town to drop, is how I see it. But things could change. As far as the top 3, I'd probably go with Arsenal, Newcastle, and City again. I think Newcastle just look great. Very likely that Chelsea could slip into the top 4, and it might be between them and United. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of how I see things now. Things could change, obviously, particularly in the winter transfer window. There usually is always a big swing after the winter transfer window. I mean, last 2 seasons ago, we had Newcastle that were a relegation team, and they completely transformed under Eddie Howe and a couple of transfers, like the Bruno Guimaraes transfer. Have I been to an in real life FPL event? Yeah, I have. I've been to a couple, mostly just FPL meets. I didn't get the chance to go to Fantasy Football Fest just because I was traveling, and I'm currently on vacation, which is why I'm on this setup now as opposed to with my usual green screen. But yeah, Everton. Oh, sorry, I forgot about Everton actually, but Fulham have actually, yeah, they've sort of hid how bad they are as a team. I feel like it's one of the nice things that Fulham does have is that they're quite attacking, so they sometimes steal a couple games here and there. I suppose it also depends on Palhinha and how long he's out for as well, to sort of visualize how they would do in the season. I'm in the US and they rarely. I think is there not a kind of FPL USA meetup? But obviously, I know the United States is huge, so I'm not sure where the events are. They didn't attack against Everton. Still scored though. Still scored. Everton really should have scored in that game themselves, but um, yeah, I can't believe Leto got a 12-pointer, thanks to Neil Mope. LU Trumpet Guy says, Luton Town. We should have scored and had a pen. If Man U players blank, I mean, no, I would give the Man U players in my team and even the Arsenal players in my team Game Week 3 as well. Rico Henry should do well this weekend. It is a bad result for Fulham. I get your point. Obviously, Mitrovic being out is terrible for them. So Chelsea will have a better season than Newcastle and Liverpool. I mean, I'm not too sold on Liverpool doing well this season. I think their transfer window was pretty poor, but I think Newcastle had a very, very, very consistent window. And I mean, they started extremely hot again versus an Aston Villa team that a lot of people have high expectations over. So I think Newcastle will continue to do good. As I said, Chelsea are the team that I think are a dark horse because they have a very, very fearsome squad. And then Nkunku, when he comes back in January or whenever he's scheduled to return, that's going to be quite scary. Luton just haven't really invested enough, have they? What's my prediction? I mean, I'm hoping Nottingham Forest to beat Sheffield United 1-0. Or better yet, 0-0 with Turner getting triple bonus points. But we'll see what happens. Nkunku won't be fit again this season. I mean, is that what we've heard? Because I feel like he's out for a few months, but I didn't hear that it would be a season ender. The Premier League is a super league, yet the most Farmers League there is. I mean, I kind of hear what you're saying in terms of Man City. What content creators do I watch? To be honest, I spend a lot of time doing my own research, so I wouldn't say I watch too many other FPL content creators. In fact, I just don't. Yeah, I would say I don't unfortunately watch any other content creators. I do take a lot of inspiration from looking at the work that they produce and just seeing, how can I improve at times or what they're doing well. So I do look at them from that aspect. But in terms of getting my own FPL advice, if that makes sense, I wouldn't say I watch any other content creators. In the past, I used to watch some content from Football Scout, but I don't really look too much into it. Your thoughts on the Prem refs? It's only been one game week. I mean, it's kind of shocking because obviously I watch La Liga a lot, and we don't really have this many situations with VAR. So I know a lot of people are upset with VAR, but really I always say it's just the people who are controlling VAR, or people who are in charge of VAR that are really struggling. Also, I'm super impressed with the quality of the stream. It's actually really good, isn't it? This hotel Wi-Fi is doing absolute wonders. You don't watch Nathan Bacon? No, I don't. I mean, I did see his bench boost, if that's what you're saying. Why is that? And Kunku's back in Jan. That's what I heard as well. Are we talking about Nathan Bacon from an enjoyment sort of point of view? You're captaining Trent. I respect that. I mean, his bench boost was interesting to say the least. I think he did a Saturday and Friday players bench boost, which meant that there was a good guarantee that he would have a very, very high rank in the world, which, fair enough if you're going to do that. Why is Bulldog trending on Twitter? I think people will think that he's injured, basically. Or like people are just surprised to see that he's out of the squad. So if you actually look at the lineups, he's not in the team, which was sort of what we expected because there was a rumor last week that Bulldog suffered an injury in training or even in the aftermath of the first game of the season. So he's out, unfortunately. You do believe channel success, you have to spend time on YouTube exploring. 100%. I definitely look at a lot of other content creators. I mean, mostly just from sort of like an inspirational point of view in terms of how I can improve my content. So that's something I'm always striving to do. But in terms of, as I said, FPL advice, it's not something I really look at. If you're talking about getting caught gambling, Tony, but apparently Paqueta is actually now involved in a kind of investigation. Um, do you think Nketiah will start? I mean, it's actually pretty likely that he'll start, I would say. Who is Chelsea's right wing? I mean, recently it's been Sterling, but it's very clear the fact that they actually went for Olise in the market, that they're actually looking to replace someone in that position. If we're to talk about that, because they played a back five last week, which is sort of different to what we saw in the preseason. In the preseason, we saw Chelsea sort of play a 4-3-3, or even a 4-2-3-1 if you want to sort of interpret Nkunku as the 10. So Carney usually was playing the 10 if we're talking like Nkunku-less teams. Jackson up top, and then we saw Sterling in the Borussia Dortmund game on the right-hand side, and then I think we saw Mudryk as well on the left. And I think a lot of people expected, for example, because Pochettino mentioned that he wanted to just try and play the team that he wanted to play for Game Week 1 in the Dortmund game, people expected the same lineup. But then obviously he came out with the 5-back, which obviously changed people's perception on things. And it's interesting because I think Chelsea will play a back four for most of the season. But, the fact that they can stretch towards a back five is very interesting too in terms of just dynamics. Colwell was left back. I mean, yeah, if you sort of interpret Chobel as the winger, I see your point. Arsenal played a game, but I mean, he's also been playing Matson as effectively a winger as well. So I hear you there. But Arsenal played a game behind closed doors, and Trossard scored two. So I wouldn't be sure that SC's. I mean, yeah, I mean, behind closed doors games and preseason games, can't read into it too much. We'll see what happens, of course. I mean, it could even be the case that Havertz could be benched instead, and you could have Trossard in the left mid position, or left center mid even. Paqueta, yeah. Yeah, I think FPL Foco does a fantastic job because he's the only one who really does shorter form content, and he does it incredibly well. He has really, really good retention. So props to him for working so hard on his animations and creating such a succinct product. Who do you plan to bring in for James? Probably Malo Gusto. Because I like the idea of going for a bench boost with Malo Gusto. That would be quite interesting for me, I would say. Do I watch the championship? From time to time. I mean, I mostly just watch some of the bigger games, but I don't watch the championship all too much, if I'm being honest. I watch the playoffs always, but yeah, I mean, during the season, I don't watch the championship as much because I don't actually have like a TV subscription. So I end up watching the Prem games because I've got access to it through um, a VPN, if I'm being honest. But yeah, Ivan Tony. I mean, Tony was incredible last season. I didn't even own him that much. I didn't even own him for the hat trick, for example. I know FPL Harry owned him for the hat trick versus Leeds, where he scored like a three kick. I mean, he scored an incredible hat trick, I remember. So yeah, crazy, crazy player. I mean, he definitely probably would have even moved this summer if he wasn't involved in a betting investigation, given the season that he had and how complete he is, in my opinion. Because he also is one of Brentford's better defenders. If you watch the way he defends set pieces, Tony's incredible. And yeah, very easy outlet. Where, for example, if you look at what Havertz did role wise versus Man City in terms of just being someone who can actually receive the long ball, that's something that Tony's really, really good at too. So it does give Brentford a huge dimension to an added dimension, sorry, to their style of play. But yeah, I don't know what will happen with Tony because he'll be back in January as well, and we'll see what happens there. You're a big QPR fan, and the situation we're in bad. If only we had Nketiah. I mean, you could get another Arsenal loanee, maybe. Who knows? Tony to Chelsea. That would actually be an interesting transfer, wouldn't it? Spurs would be a good one too. I mean, arguably Brentford are in a better footballing situation than Spurs. I don't know if that's controversial. I mean, it could be because obviously Spurs is a much larger commercial team and they have a huge stadium. So actually, they're getting some revenues there too from the new stadium. But I mean, in terms of the results, Brentford look like a pretty good situation. What country am I from? I'm from Hong Kong, but I'm also half Spanish. He would be perfect for either. Yeah. I mean, Brentford and Brighton have shown what it's like to be an extremely competent board, I would say, in terms of just signing players consistently for good prices. And I think maybe Brentford, you could argue, have been pretty poor at selling. Brighton have absolutely smashed it with Caicedo and some other sells. But hey, do you think Newcastle could replace Tottenham? I think they already have replaced Tottenham in the Big Six, if we're being completely honest. There's a gigantic gap between the quality of defense that Newcastle is and some of the other teams in the top six even. So yeah, I think Chelsea's. I don't think Chelsea have slipped out of the top six. I know positionally they struggled, but the amount of spending, getting Pochettino, a lot of people are predicting, of course, that Chelsea would finish higher than Tottenham this year too. So I would say, I mean, my top six table would look something like probably actually the same as last season's, where it's City, Arsenal, Newcastle, United. I would actually say Chelsea fourth, and then United, Liverpool. But I mean, I'm also dismissing Brighton, and honestly, Roberto De Zerbi seems like one of the best managers that we have around in the Premier League. So maybe Brighton really deserves a shout over maybe even Liverpool or United. It's tough because I do think Liverpool have quite a thin squad, and the depth isn't great. They haven't really gotten a left center back, considering they look a bit better in the back three. How many seasons of FPL have I played? I've only played 3 full seasons of FPL. Previous to that, I was sort of like a very, very casual manager. So I've got some finishes where I just played 3 game weeks and just stopped playing or didn't even play the season. So I played 3 full seasons of FPL from 2021 onwards till today. Charlie says, gotta go when Nketiah bags a brace against Palace. Think of my elite ball knowledge. I appreciate that, Charlie. Good luck with that. And I hope Nketiah does well. I actually have Nketiah on all my FPL fantasy draft teams, so I hope he does do well. Jackson or João Pedro? I mean, I like João for this week, but then I think going forwards, Jackson's a very, very good pick. Oh God, I'm sorry. Actually, I think I might actually have to run because my family do want to get going. I was really wanting to do a watch along, but I'm not sure if I can do it now. We just have to head out for. We might have to head out for dinner. Planned transfers of game week 3. Prediction for the first game. I mean, I think a little bit of bias. Obviously, I just want Nottingham Forest to win 1-0. Planned transfers for game week 3, though. Probably James to Gusto and then someone to Jackson, whether João Pedro or Taylor. If I want a bench boost, I'll just go for Taylor, basically, is the way I'm seeing it. But yeah, I really do apologize, guys, but I think I won't be able to do the watch along today. I'll try and do a watch along when I'm actually back in London, where it'll be easy for me to do the watch along. But I've just got to go. Unfortunately, I'm on holiday, and I'm also flying off back to London tomorrow, so it is a bit tight. And I'll see you guys next week. So thank you guys so much for watching, and like and subscribe, and take care. Hope you guys have a wonderful game week too.